Subscribe to Infidelity Tales Lab for more stories. Now let's begin this one. Chapter 1. The Architect of Quiet Lives. Neil West had built his life on precision. At 42, he stood 6 feet tall, with the kind of lean build that came from morning runs rather than gym memberships. His dark hair showed distinguished threads of silver at the temples, and his gray eyes held the calm intelligence of someone who thought 3 moves ahead. As a structural engineer specializing in earthquake-resistant architecture, Neil had spent 2 decades ensuring buildings wouldn't crumble when the ground beneath them shook. He'd never imagined he'd need those same skills to keep his own life from collapsing. He met Marissa Stanley at a construction site 12 years ago. She was a hospitality consultant, 28 at the time, evaluating a hotel project he was working on. She had auburn hair that caught the afternoon sun, green eyes that sparkled with ambition, and a laugh that made him forget about load-bearing calculations. Their courtship was a whirlwind. 6 months of late-night dinners, weekend getaways to wine country, and conversations that stretched until dawn. They married in a small ceremony overlooking the Pacific, with Marissa's younger sister Beverly as maid of honor and Neil's college roommate Kelvin Callahan as best man. Emma arrived 2 years later, a green-eyed miniature of her mother with Neil's thoughtful temperament. Now 10 years old, she was sharp as a tack, excelling in 5th grade and playing competitive soccer. Neil coached her team on weekends, teaching the girls that sometimes the best play wasn't the obvious one. For 9 years, their life in Oak Ridge, a suburban enclave 40 miles from the city, was everything Neil had hoped for. Marissa built her consulting business from their home office, traveling occasionally, but always returning with stories and gifts for Emma. They were partners, parents, people who finished each other's sentences at dinner parties. Then came the opportunity that changed everything. 18 months ago, Marissa was offered a position as director of operations for the Grandview Hotel Group, a luxury chain expanding aggressively through the West Coast. The catch, she needed to be based in Riverside, a city 3 hours north, overseeing the renovation and reopening of their flagship property. The salary was substantial, nearly triple what she made consulting. It would set them up for Emma's college, early retirement, the life they'd always planned. "It's temporary," Marissa had said, her hand in his across their kitchen table. 18 months, maybe 2 years maximum. "I'll come home every other weekend. You and Emma can visit. We've talked about investing in her future. This is how we do it." Neil had reservations. He'd seen enough marriages crumble under the weight of distance. But Marissa's eyes held such determination, such hunger for this achievement, that he couldn't deny her. They were solid. They'd survive this. "We'll make it work," he'd agreed. For the first 6 months, they did. Marissa came home religiously every other weekend. They video called nightly, Emma chattering about school while Marissa described the hotel's renovation progress. Marble imported from Italy, a rooftop bar with views of the river, designer suites that cost more per night than most people's monthly rent. Neil would fall asleep some nights to her voice describing crown molding and color schemes, feeling the distance like a dull ache, but managing it. But around month 7, things shifted. Marissa's visits became monthly, then sporadic. She was slammed with deadlines, dealing with construction delays, managing difficult contractors. The video calls grew shorter, her attention divided. Neil noticed she'd redecorated her apartment. He could see glimpses of expensive furniture and artwork in the background of their calls. She'd always been frugal. This new extravagance felt off-brand. "Mom's different," Emma observed one night after a particularly brief call. She sat on Neil's lap, her small face troubled. "She doesn't ask about my games anymore. She's stressed with work, honey," Neil had replied, though doubt had already begun its corrosive work in his gut. "She still loves you more than anything." 3 weeks ago, Marissa forgot Emma's birthday. Not just the gifts, she forgot to call. When Neil reached her that evening, furious, she'd been mortified, tearful, full of excuses about a crisis with the hotel's grand reopening. She promised to make it up to Emma, to do better. But Emma had cried herself to sleep that night, and Neil had sat in the hallway outside her room, listening to her muffled sobs, feeling something cold and hard solidify in his chest. That's when he decided they'd visit Riverside for Marissa's 40th birthday this coming Saturday. No warning, no chance for her to prepare her apartment or her story. Just a genuine surprise. Him and Emma showing up with flowers and cake, celebrating like a normal family. Kelvin had thought it was a bad idea when Neil mentioned it over beers last Friday. "Brother," Kelvin had said, his dark eyes serious above his pint glass, "if you're suspicious enough to do a surprise visit, you're already past the point of surprises. You think you want to know, but once you know, you can't unknow." "I have to know," Neil had replied simply. Kelvin had nodded slowly. "Then I guess you do. But listen, whatever you find, don't react in the moment. Smart men play the long game. Anger makes you stupid, and stupid gets you screwed in divorce court." "I'm not planning to react," Neil had said. "I'm planning to know the truth." Now, driving north on Interstate 5 with Emma beside him, birthday cake secured in the trunk, and a bouquet of Marissa's favorite peonies in the back seat, Neil felt his heart hammering against his ribs. Emma was quiet, staring out the window at the passing farmland, her small hands clutching a handmade card she'd spent hours decorating. "Dad," she said softly as they passed the Riverside city limits sign. "Yes, sweetheart. Do you think Mom will be happy to see us?" The question pierced him. That his daughter even had to ask felt like an indictment of everything they'd let happen. "I think she'll be thrilled," he said with more confidence than he felt. "It's her birthday. Nothing makes a birthday better than seeing the people you love most." Emma nodded, but she didn't look convinced. Riverside's downtown core was a mixture of historic architecture and modern development. The Grandview Hotel dominated the riverfront, its freshly renovated facade gleaming in the afternoon sun, a testament to Marissa's work. Neil had looked up her apartment building earlier. It was in the waterfront towers, a luxury high-rise 6 blocks from the hotel. Top floor, corner unit. The rent alone was probably more than their mortgage back home. They parked in the visitors' lot at 3:47 p.m. Marissa had mentioned in passing weeks ago that she usually worked from the hotel until 6 on Saturdays, managing the weekend changeover. They'd have time to set up in her apartment, order dinner, really surprise her. The building's lobby was all marble and chrome, with a bored-looking doorman named Pedro who barely looked up when Neil explained they were visiting Mrs. West in 24C. "She expecting you?" Pedro asked, his tone suggesting he didn't particularly care. "Birthday surprise," Neil said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Pedro waved them toward the elevators. "Have fun." The elevator was mirrored on all sides, and Neil caught Emma's reflection looking small and nervous. He squeezed her shoulder reassuringly as they ascended, watching the numbers climb. 22, 23, 24. The hallway was quiet, carpeted in plush navy blue. 24C was at the end, corner unit as advertised. Neil had texted Kelvin that morning for a favor. Picking Marissa's apartment lock would be technically breaking and entering, but Kelvin's cousin Jimmy Bird was a locksmith who owed them both favors from a poker game gone wrong. Jimmy had talked Neil through the process of using a pick set, though Neil had felt queasy about it. Now, standing at the door with Emma beside him, he hesitated. "We have a key code, right?" Emma asked. Marissa had texted Neil the code months ago for emergencies. He'd forgotten he had it. Relief washed through him. At least they'd enter legally. He punched in the 6 digits. The lock clicked green. The door opened with a soft whoosh. "Mom," Emma called out, stepping forward. The apartment was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the river, furniture that belonged in design magazines, artwork that definitely wasn't purchased at HomeGoods. But Neil barely registered any of it because Emma had gone rigid beside him, her entire body tensing like she'd been electrocuted. "Dad, don't go in." She grabbed his wrist with surprising strength, yanking him backward. "Emma, what?" "Dad, don't." Her voice was shrill, panicked in a way he'd never heard. She was staring into the apartment, her face bone white, and then she was pulling him, dragging him back toward the elevator with desperate urgency. "Emma, stop. What's wrong?" Neil tried to look past her into the apartment, but she positioned herself in front of him, her small frame shaking. "Dad, look at that." She pointed with a trembling hand, not into the apartment, but up. Neil's gaze followed her finger to the ceiling of the entryway, and his world shattered. The ceiling wasn't just a ceiling. A large mirror, approximately 4 by 6 feet, had been professionally installed, angled downward to reflect the view into the bedroom beyond the living room. But it wasn't the mirror itself that made Neil's blood run cold. It was what the mirror revealed. From this angle, he could see into the bedroom, and he could see two figures on the bed. One was unmistakably Marissa, her auburn hair spread across white pillows. The other was a man, his back visible, broad shoulders, dark hair. They weren't asleep. Neil's brain seemed to short-circuit, unable to process what he was seeing while simultaneously processing it too well. The mirror, the angle. This was intentional. This wasn't hidden. It was featured. Emma was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face as she pulled at his arm. "Dad, please, let's go. Please." The sound of his daughter's distress snapped Neil back to the present. He let her pull him away from the door, back into the hallway. He closed the door as quietly as he'd opened it, his hands operating on autopilot while his mind reeled. They stood in the hallway, Emma pressed against his side, both of them breathing hard. Neil's vision seemed to pulse with each heartbeat, rage and grief warring in his chest. "I'm sorry," Emma whispered. "I'm sorry you had to see that. I'm sorry. You have nothing to be sorry for." Neil managed, his voice rough. He crouched down to her level, gripping her shoulders gently. "Nothing. Do you understand? This isn't your fault. Is Mom?" Emma couldn't finish the question. "We're going to figure this out," Neil said, though he had no idea how. "But right now, we're going to leave. We're going to go back to the car, and we're going to drive home, and we're going to take some time to think. We can't tell her we saw," Emma said suddenly, her eyes wide. "If we tell her, she'll know we know, and she'll lie or leave," or she was spiraling into panic. Hey. Neil pulled her into a hug, his mind racing even as he comforted her. "You're right. We don't tell her yet. We play it smart." Kelvin's words echoed in his mind. Smart men play the long game. They took the elevator down in silence. Pedro didn't look up as they passed. Neil buckled Emma into the car, his movements mechanical. The cake was still in the trunk, the peonies still in the back seat. He'd been so naive. As he pulled out of the parking lot, his phone buzzed. A text from Marissa, "Working late tonight. Hotel, emergency. Love you." Neil stared at the message, then at the waterfront towers receding in his rearview mirror. She wasn't at the hotel. She was with whoever that man was, in that obscene apartment with its ceiling mirrors, living a life Neil hadn't even imagined existed. He deleted the message without responding and pointed the car toward home. Beside him, Emma stared out the window, tears still sliding silently down her cheeks. And Neil West began to plan. Chapter 2. Shadows and Angles. The drive back to Oak Ridge took 4 hours. Neil stopped twice, once for gas, once because Emma needed the bathroom and to splash cold water on her face. They didn't speak about what they'd seen. Instead, they listened to Emma's playlist, Taylor Swift and Olivia Rodrigo, filling the silence with songs about betrayal that felt entirely too appropriate. It was past 9 when they pulled into their driveway. The house looked the same as when they'd left that morning, but everything felt different. Neil unlocked the front door, and Emma went straight to her room without a word. He heard the lock click, then muffled crying. He stood in the kitchen, hands braced on the counter, and let himself feel it for exactly 60 seconds. The rage, the humiliation, the grief of watching his marriage reveal itself as a lie. His knuckles went white. His jaw ached from clenching. Heat flooded his face. 60 seconds. Then he breathed out slowly and put it away. Because Kelvin was right. Anger made you stupid. And Neil wasn't going to be stupid. He knocked on Emma's door. "Sweetheart, can I come in?" A pause, then yeah. She was curled on her bed, still in her clothes, eyes red and puffy. Neil sat on the edge of the bed and took her hand. "I know today was horrible," he said carefully. "And I know you're scared and confused and angry. All of that is okay. But I need you to understand something. We can't let Mom know we went to Riverside." "I know," Emma said miserably. "If she knows, she'll just lie." "Exactly. So we're going to act normal. When she calls, we're going to talk to her like we always do. And while we're doing that, I'm going to figure out what's really going on. Are you going to divorce her?" Emma's voice was small. "I don't know yet," Neil said honestly. but I need to understand the whole situation first. Who that man was. How long this has been happening. What else I don't know. And I can't do that if she knows I'm looking. Emma nodded slowly. Like in chess, when you don't show your strategy until checkmate. Neil felt a fierce pride in his daughter's intelligence, even through the pain. Exactly like that. I won't tell, Emma promised. But Dad, I'm not going to pretend everything's okay with her. I can't. You don't have to, Neil said. You can be distant, just not suspicious. Can you do that? I think so. He hugged her, and they stayed like that for a long moment. Then Neil tucked her in, kissed her forehead, and went downstairs to begin his research. The home office had been Marissa's domain when she worked from home. Now it was mostly storage, but Neil claimed the desk, opened his laptop, and started taking notes. What I know. Marissa in Riverside apartment with unknown man at 3:47 p.m. on Saturday. Ceiling mirror professionally installed, angled toward bedroom. Apartment far more expensive than necessary. Declining contact with family over past 8 months. Texted about working late while clearly not working. What I need to know. Identity of the man. Duration of affair. Financial situation. Where is money really going? Who else knows? What else is she hiding? Neil stared at the list, then opened a browser and started searching. First stop, Marissa's social media. Her Facebook was mostly professional. Photos from hotel events, industry conferences, bland inspirational quotes. But her Instagram, which he hadn't checked in months, told a different story. The posts were public but subtle. Photos from expensive restaurants, tagged with business associates. Pictures from a wine tasting in Napa from 3 months ago. Marissa laughing with a group of people, including a man who appeared in several shots. Tall, dark-haired, maybe mid-40s. The caption, great team building with a Grandview crew. Neil clicked on the tagged accounts. The man's name was Ross Huff. His profile was public, and it was immediately clear who he was. Regional Vice President of Development for Grandview Hotel Group. Marissa's boss. Neil sat back, his jaw tight. An affair with her boss. Classic and cliched, which somehow made it worse. He scrolled through Ross Huff's Instagram. The man lived large. Photos from Vegas, Miami, Dubai. Always first class. Always luxury accommodations. Always with beautiful people. There were several shots with Marissa going back 8 months. Carefully framed to look professional, but with body language that told a different story. The way Ross's hand rested on Marissa's shoulder. The way she leaned into him. The way they looked at each other. Neil's phone buzzed. A text from Marissa. Still working. Don't wait up. Love you both. He stared at it, then at Ross Huff's latest Instagram story from 2 hours ago. A photo of an expensive bottle of wine with the caption Saturday night done right. Neil took a screenshot of everything. The Instagram posts, the timeline, the connections. He created a secure folder on his laptop labeled Project Files and started building a dossier. At midnight, he called Kelvin. It's late, Kelvin answered, his voice groggy. She's sleeping with her boss, Neil said without preamble. Guy named Ross Huff, regional VP at her company. A pause. Then, you went to Riverside. We went. Emma saw something. Ceiling mirror angled to show the bedroom from the entryway. Very intentional design. Jesus Christ. Kelvin was fully awake now. Emma saw them. In the reflection. She pulled me out before I fully processed it, but yeah. How's she doing? About as well as you'd expect when your 10-year-old realizes her mom is living a double life. And you? I'm past anger. I'm in planning mode. Good. Kelvin's tone shifted to businesslike. What do you need? Information. I need to know everything about Ross Huff and what Marissa's really been doing up there. I need to know if money's missing. I need evidence that will hold up in court. I know a guy, Kelvin said. Beverly Dean. She's a PI, works mostly divorce cases. Discreet, thorough, doesn't fuck around. She helped my brother when his wife was hiding assets before filing. I'll text you her number. Thanks. Neil, be careful. If this guy is a regional VP, he's got money and probably connections. Don't underestimate what people will do when their comfortable lives are threatened. Neither should he, Neil said quietly. After hanging up, Neil spent another hour documenting everything he could find online. Ross Huff's employment history. He'd been with Grandview for 12 years. working his way up from hotel manager to his current position. Divorced twice, no kids mentioned. He owned a condo in Riverside, drove a Tesla, and based on LinkedIn, made somewhere north of $250,000 a year. He also found property records. Ross owned that condo outright, no mortgage. But the address for Marissa's apartment, 24C in Waterfront Towers? The unit was leased by Grandview Hotel Group as corporate housing. Neil sat forward. Corporate housing meant it was on the company dime, which meant Ross had likely arranged it. Which meant this affair wasn't just personal. It was facilitated and potentially funded by her employer. This was getting complicated in interesting ways. At 1:30 a.m., exhausted and wired at the same time, Neil went upstairs. He paused at Emma's door, listening. She was asleep, her breathing steady. He continued to his own room. The room he'd shared with Marissa for 10 years, now feeling like a museum of their false history. He didn't sleep much. When he did, he dreamed of mirrors and angles, of his wife's face reflected and distorted, of foundations crumbling beneath his feet. Sunday morning, Emma came down for breakfast, looking hollowed out but determined. "What's the plan?" she asked. Neil poured her orange juice. "I'm going to hire someone to help us figure out what's really happening, and we're going to act totally normal. When Mom calls, you can talk to her or not. But if you do, keep it short and neutral. You're busy with homework, you're tired, whatever feels natural. What are you going to say?" "That I love her," Neil said, "and that I can't wait until she comes home next weekend." Emma made a face. "That's not acting normal. That's acting stupid." "No," Neil corrected gently. "That's acting strategic. There's a difference." At 10 a.m., Marissa video called. Neil answered, angling the camera away from his face because he didn't trust his expression. Emma sat on the couch, visible in the frame but distant. "Hey." Marissa's face filled the screen, bright and cheerful. She was in her apartment. He could see the expensive furniture in the background. "How's my favorite family?" "Good," Neil said neutrally. "Quiet weekend here." "How's work?" "Exhausting." She sighed dramatically. "The grand reopening is in 3 weeks, and everything's chaos. I barely slept last night." The lie was so smooth, so practiced, that Neil fell cold. "Sounds rough," he said. "You coming home next weekend?" "I'm going to try," Marissa said. "But I might need to push it to the following week. Things are just so crazy here." "Mom forgot it's my game next Saturday," Emma said suddenly, her voice flat. Marissa's face shifted, guilty. "Oh, honey, it's fine," Emma interrupted. "Dad will be there. He always is. The barb at home." Marissa looked wounded. "Emma, I'm sorry, I have homework," Emma said, standing abruptly. "Bye, Mom." She left the room. Neil heard her footsteps on the stairs, her door closing. "She's really angry with me," Marissa said quietly. "She misses you," Neil said, which was true and also safe. "I know. I'm trying to make this work, Neil. The money's been incredible. I transferred another $5,000 to our joint savings last week. We're building toward the life we want." "Right," Neil said. "The life we want." They talked for another few minutes before Marissa had to go. "Conference call," she claimed. After she hung up, Neil sat staring at his phone. $5,000 to savings. He opened his banking app and checked their joint account. Sure enough, a transfer from Marissa's personal account 5 days ago. $5,000. But when he checked their credit card statements, which he hadn't done in months, trusting her to manage expenses, his stomach dropped. Charges at luxury boutiques in Riverside. High-end restaurants. A $3,000 transaction at something called Noir Salon and Spa 3 weeks ago. A $1,200 charge at a jewelry store Neil had never heard of. He added it up. Over the past 6 months, Marissa had spent nearly $40,000 on personal expenses from their joint credit card. Far more than the money she'd been transferring to savings. Neil felt the anger trying to resurface and breathed through it. Not yet. He needed more information. He texted the number Kelvin had sent him. "Beverly Dean?" The response came quickly. "That's me. Kelvin said you might reach out. Can you meet today?" "This afternoon." "Where?" "There's a diner called Marlowe's on 6th Street. 2 p.m.? See you there." At 1:45, Neil told Emma he was going to run errands. She looked at him knowingly. Finding out the truth. Working on it. Good, she said. I want to know everything. I'm not a little kid. I know, Neil said. When I have answers, I'll share them. Marlowe's Diner was a local institution, all chrome and red vinyl booths, smelling like coffee and bacon. Beverly Dean was already in a back booth, nursing a coffee and reading something on her phone. She looked up as Neil approached. A black woman in her 50s with graying braids pulled back in a ponytail, sharp eyes that missed nothing, and the kind of confident stillness that came from years of watching people. Mr. West, she extended a hand. Neil, thanks for meeting me. Kelvin's recommendation goes a long way, Beverly said. He told me basic situation, wife working in another city, suspected infidelity. What can you tell me? Neil told her everything. The deteriorating relationship, the surprise visit, the ceiling mirror, Ross Huff, the financial discrepancies. Beverly took notes on a tablet, her expression neutral, but her eyes sharp. When he finished, she sat back. The mirror's interesting. That's not standard affair behavior. That's exhibitionism. Could be a kink thing, could be something else entirely. You said it was angled to show the bedroom from the entry. Perfectly positioned, Neil confirmed. Beverly's jaw tightened. I've seen this before. Not often, but a few times. Hotels, high-end apartments. Sometimes these arrangements aren't just affairs. They're more transactional. What do you mean? I mean, sometimes powerful men set up mistresses in corporate apartments, create little fantasy worlds. But they also sometimes use those apartments for clients, business associates, people they want to impress or influence. The mirror could be for private viewing, or it could be for recording. Neil's blood ran cold. Recording? It's a theory, Beverly said carefully. But if Roshoff is facilitating this setup, I want to know why. Is he just sleeping with your wife? Or is there something bigger? You mentioned financial discrepancies. That's worth digging into. Both hers and his. How long will this take? Depend on what we find. I'll start surveillance tomorrow, photos, video, movement tracking. I'll also run deep financial checks, look into Huff's background, see if there are patterns. Give me a week, and I'll have a preliminary report. Cost: $5,000 retainer, $150 an hour plus expenses after that. Kelvin said you're good for it. Neil thought of the $40,000 Marissa had spent. I'm good for it. One more thing, Beverly said, her eyes meeting his. Once we start pulling this thread, there's no putting it back. If there's more going on, criminal activity, fraud, exploitation, I'm obligated to report certain things. Are you prepared for wherever this leads? Neil thought of Emma's tear-stained face, of Marissa's easy lies, of the mirror reflecting a life he'd never been part of. I'm prepared, he said. Beverly nodded. Then let's get to work. Chapter 3. Foundations. The week that followed was a study in duality. On the surface, Neil maintained his routine, work, Emma's school, and soccer, the mundane rhythms of suburban life. Beneath that surface, he was building a case. Beverly worked fast. By Tuesday, she confirmed that Marissa and Ross spent most evenings together at the Waterfront Towers apartment. Sometimes they went to dinner first, always expensive places where Ross paid. Sometimes he arrived directly from work. He usually left around midnight, returning to his own condo across town. They're not particularly careful, Beverly reported over the phone. No disguises, no sneaking. They act like a couple in public. Either they're arrogant, or they think no one who matters will see. What about the hotel? Are they careful there? They maintain professionalism at work from what I can see. But I've got my eye on something else. The apartment isn't just used by them. Neil sat forward. What do you mean? 3 nights in the past week. Other people have used the apartment. Different men, always well-dressed, always arriving after Marissa leaves. They're let in by building staff like they're expected. They stay for a few hours, then leave. Ross shows up separately on those nights, never overlapping. Who are they? Working on it. I've got photos, running them through databases now. But Neil? This is looking less like a simple affair, and more like Ross is using that apartment for multiple purposes. What purposes? That's what I'm going to find out. By Wednesday, Beverly had a name for one of the men, Darren Pacheco, a commercial real estate developer with projects throughout the region. He'd been in the apartment Monday night from 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. I pulled property records, Beverly said. Pacheco has purchased 3 properties from developers who then partnered with Grandview Hotels in the past 2 years. He's also been photographed at charity events with Ross Huff. They run in the same circles. So Ross is, what? Using Marissa's apartment to wine and dine business contacts. That would be the generous interpretation. The less generous one is that he's using it for something Grandview wouldn't want to know about. On Thursday, Beverly sent Neil a photo that made his stomach turn. It was a screenshot from what appeared to be a high-end dating app called Elite Connections, an app Neil had never heard of. The profile showed Marissa, using a different name, Marissa Sterling. The photos were professionally done, glamorous. The bio read, sophisticated companion for discerning gentlemen. Discretion assured. Neil stared at his phone in his parked car. He'd been about to pick up Emma from soccer and felt the world tilt. I need you to call me, he texted Beverly. She called immediately. You saw the profile. What is this? Neil's voice was tight. Elite Connections is an escort service masquerading as a dating app. High-end clients, high-end providers. It's technically legal. They're careful about the wording, but we both know what it really is. Marissa is, he couldn't say it. I don't know yet if she's actively meeting clients through this, Beverly said quickly. The profile could be inactive, could be something Ross set up without her knowledge, could be a lot of things. But we need to consider the possibility that Ross has arranged something here, either with Marissa's participation or using her. Why would she agree to this? Neil's voice broke slightly. She makes good money. We're not desperate. Money, coercion, manipulation could be anything. Some of these high-end operations groom women slowly, normalize behavior gradually. Start with expensive gifts and dinners. Move to entertaining clients. Make it feel glamorous rather than transactional. By the time they realize what they're doing, they're in too deep. Neil pressed his palm to his forehead. You said you found Darren Pacheco in the apartment. Do you think? I think there's a pattern developing that we need to understand fully before drawing conclusions. I'm going to do more digging, financial records, communications, if I can access them legally, pattern analysis. Give me a few more days. Emma knocked on the car window, making Neil jump. Dad? Practice is over. I have to go, he told Beverly. Stay calm. We'll figure this out. Emma climbed in, sweaty and flushed from practice. You okay? You look weird. Just work stuff, Neil lied. How was practice? Coach said I should try for striker instead of midfield. She buckled her seatbelt. Did that investigator find out who Mom was with? Neil hesitated. She's still gathering information. You'll tell me when you know, right? You promised. I promised to share answers, not theories. When I have solid facts, you'll know them. Emma studied him. It's bad, isn't it? Worse than just Mom having an affair. His daughter was too smart for her own good. I don't know yet, Neil said honestly. But yeah, it might be more complicated than I thought. That night, after Emma went to bed, Neil did something he'd been avoiding. He accessed Marissa's laptop. She'd left it at home when she moved to Riverside, saying she had a work computer there. It had been sitting in their home office and used for months. He knew her password. They'd never hidden things from each other, or so he'd thought. The laptop booted up slowly, operating system out of date. Neil opened her email. The inbox was mostly junk mail and old work correspondence from before her Grandview job. But when he checked her deleted items folder, carefully restored emails told a different story. Emails from Ross Huff, starting 9 months ago. The early ones were innocuous. Great meeting today. Let me know if you need anything to settle in. But around month 2, they shifted. You looked incredible at dinner last night. Can't stop thinking about you. This thing between us. I know it's complicated, but I've never felt this way. I've arranged for upgraded housing. You deserve better than that cramped studio. Consider it an early birthday gift. The emails became increasingly intimate, increasingly explicit. Neil forced himself to read them, cataloging details even as his heart hammered. Then, for months ago, the tone changed again. There's a client dinner next Tuesday. He's a big deal, and I need you there. With a red dress. You know how this works. Pacheco loved meeting you. He's signing the contract next week. You're amazing at this. Another successful evening. Your cut is in the account we discussed. You've earned every penny. Neil sat back, his hands shaking. This wasn't just an affair. Marissa was participating in something, entertaining Ross's clients, being compensated for it. Whether she'd been manipulated into it or gone willingly, she was involved. He found the account we discussed in another email, a reference to a separate bank account at a financial institution Neil didn't recognize. He wrote down the account number and bank name. Beverly could investigate further. The final email in the deleted folder was from 3 weeks ago. Keep the profile active. The right opportunities are worth the wait. You're too good at this to waste. So the Elite Connections profile was real, active, and something Ross was managing. Using Marissa as a high-end escort for business purposes, likely pocketing a percentage while she received her cut. Neil closed the laptop, his mind racing. This changed everything. This wasn't just about divorce and custody. This was potentially criminal. Ross was using his position at Grandview to facilitate prostitution, even if high-end and technically deniable. Marissa was complicit. The corporate housing was probably being used as the venue. His phone buzzed. A text from Marissa. Miss you. Coming home this Saturday after all. Emma's game is at 10, right? Neil stared at the text. She was coming home. The woman who'd been living a double life, who'd been entertaining her boss's clients in a corporate apartment, who'd lied about working late while she did God knows what. She was coming home to play suburban mom for a weekend. The rage he'd been controlling threatened to break through. But then Kelvin's words echoed again. Smart men play the long game. He texted back, that's great. Emma will be thrilled. Game's at 10, yeah. See you Saturday. Then he called Beverly. I've got more, he said when she answered. A lot more. And it's worse than we thought. He told her everything. The emails, the bank account, the explicit references to clients and compensation. Beverly listened without interrupting. Jesus, she said when he finished. This is a whole operation. Ross has set this up systematically. Corporate housing as the venue. Marissa as one of the providers, probably keeping his own involvement at arm's length enough to claim deniability if anyone asks questions. What do I do? First, we document everything. I'll get evidence of the financial flows, the client meetings, the full scope of the operation. Then we decide who needs to know. Police, Grandview corporate, attorneys. But Neil, this is bigger than your marriage. If we expose this, there are going to be consequences for a lot of people. Good, Neil said coldly. There should be. I'm with you. But before we blow this up, let's make sure we have irrefutable evidence. These people have money and lawyers. We do this right, or we don't do it all. How long? Marissa's coming home this weekend? Saturday. Perfect. I'll use that time to do a thorough sweep of the apartment. Cameras, financial documents, anything I can legally access. By Monday, I'll have a complete picture. Then we decide how to proceed. After hanging up, Neil went to Emma's room. She was still awake, reading by the soft glow of her bedside lamp. Can't sleep? He asked from the doorway. Thinking too much. She set down her book. Mom's coming home this weekend? She texted. She wants to make your game. Emma's face was unreadable. Do I have to pretend everything's okay? You have to pretend you don't know about the apartment, Neil said carefully. But you don't have to pretend to be happy. You can be distant. You can be upset about her missing stuff. That's all legitimate. Good, because I don't think I can act happy. Neil sat on the edge of her bed. There might be some difficult things coming. Changes. Stuff involving lawyers and maybe other people too. I want you to know that whatever happens, you and I are solid. You're my priority. Always. Emma's eyes filled with tears. Are you going to tell me what you found out? Not yet. Soon. But it's more complicated than I thought. I need to make sure I handle it right. To protect me? To protect both of us. He kissed her forehead. Try to sleep. We got soccer in the morning. Friday passed in a blur of work and preparation. Neil made sure the house was clean, groceries stocked, everything exactly as Marissa would expect. He moved through the motions mechanically, his mind constantly calculating next steps. Beverly texted updates throughout the day, got access to the financial accounts. Following the money trail, Darren Pacheco visited the apartment again last night. Got video. This operation's been running for at least 6 months. Multiple clients. Substantial money involved. By Friday night, Neil had made his decision. He wasn't just going to divorce Marissa. He was going to dismantle the entire thing. Expose Ross, protect any other women who might be involved, ensure there were real consequences for what they'd built. But first, he was going to let Marissa come home and play house for one last weekend. Because smart men played the long game. And Neil West's game was just beginning. Chapter 4, The Performance. Saturday morning arrived with the crisp clarity of autumn. Neil woke at 6, watched the sun rise through the bedroom window, and rehearsed his performance. He needed to be the loving husband, welcoming his wife home, attentive but not overeager, warm but not suspicious. It was the role he'd played for 18 months, believing it was real. Now it was just stagecraft. Emma was already awake when he checked on her, dressed in her soccer uniform, braiding her hair with mechanical precision. Ready for the game? Neil asked from the doorway. Ready for everything. Her jaw was set in a way that reminded him of himself. 10 years old, and already learning that sometimes you had to wear a mask. Remember, I know, Dad. Act normal. Don't let her know we know. Emma finished her braid and secured it with an elastic. When is she getting here? She said she'd arrive around 9:30. Enough time to get to the field by 10. Great. Emma's voice was flat. Can't wait. They had breakfast in near silence. Eggs and toast, orange juice, the comfortable quiet of a Saturday morning that felt anything but comfortable. At 9, Neil's phone buzzed with a text from Marissa, leaving Riverside now. So excited to see you both. Neil responded, drive safe. We'll be ready. I'm with you. But before we blow this up, let's make sure we have irrefutable evidence. These people have money and lawyers. We do this right, or we don't do it all. How long? Marissa's coming home this weekend? Saturday. Perfect. I'll use that time to do a thorough sweep of the apartment. Cameras, financial documents, anything I can legally access. By Monday, I'll have a complete picture. Then we decide how to proceed. After hanging up, Neil went to Emma's room. She was still awake, reading by the soft glow of her bedside lamp. Can't sleep? He asked from the doorway. Thinking too much. She set down her book. Mom's coming home this weekend. She texted. She wants to make your game. Emma's face was unreadable. Do I have to pretend everything's okay? You have to pretend you don't know about the apartment, Neil said carefully. But you don't have to pretend to be happy. You could be distant. You could be upset about her missing stuff. That's all legitimate. Good. Because I don't think I can act happy. Neil sat on the edge of her bed. There might be some difficult things coming. Changes. Stuff involving lawyers and maybe other people too. I want you to know that whatever happens, you and I are solid. You're my priority. Always. Emma's eyes filled with tears. Are you going to tell me what you found out? Not yet. Soon. But it's more complicated than I thought. I need to make sure I handle it right. To protect me? To protect both of us. He kissed her forehead. Try to sleep. We've got soccer in the morning. Friday passed in a blur of work and preparation. Neil made sure the house was clean, groceries stocked, everything exactly as Marissa would expect. He moved through the motions mechanically, his mind constantly calculating next steps. Beverly texted updates throughout the day, got access to the financial accounts. Following the money trail, Darren Pacheco visited the apartment again last night. Got video. This operation's been running for at least 6 months. Multiple clients. Substantial money involved. By Friday night, Neil had made his decision. He wasn't just going to divorce Marissa. He was going to dismantle the entire thing. Expose Ross, protect any other women who might be involved, ensure there were real consequences for what they'd built. But first, he was going to let Marissa come home and play house for one last weekend. Because smart men played the long game. And Neil West's game was just beginning. Chapter 4, The Performance. Saturday morning arrived with the crisp clarity of autumn. Neil woke at 6, watched the sun rise through the bedroom window, and rehearsed his performance. He needed to be the loving husband welcoming his wife home, attentive but not overeager, warm but not suspicious. It was the role he'd played for 18 months, believing it was real. Now it was just stagecraft. Emma was already awake when he checked on her, dressed in her soccer uniform, braiding her hair with mechanical precision. Ready for the game? Neil asked from the doorway. Ready for everything. Her jaw was set in a way that reminded him of himself. 10 years old, and already learning that sometimes you had to wear a mask. Remember, I know, Dad. Act normal. Don't let her know we know. Emma finished her braid and secured it with an elastic. When's she getting here? She said she'd arrive around 9:30. Enough time to get to the field by 10. Great. Emma's voice was flat. Can't wait. They had breakfast in near silence. Eggs and toast, orange juice, the comfortable quiet of a Saturday morning that felt anything but comfortable. At 9, Neil's phone buzzed with a text from Marissa, leaving Riverside now. So excited to see you both. Neil responded, drive safe. We'll be ready. Beverly had sent him a message at 7 a.m. Apartment suite complete. You want to see this? Call me after Marissa leaves on Monday. Whatever she'd found could wait. Right now, Neil had to focus on maintaining the illusion. Marissa arrived at 9:45, her Audi pulling into the driveway with a cheerful honk. Neil watched from the window as she emerged. Auburn hair perfectly styled, designer sunglasses, expensive casual wear that probably cost more than his monthly car payment. She looked radiant, successful, like a woman who had everything together. She had no idea she was walking into a trap. They're here, Neil called to Emma. Emma came downstairs slowly, deliberately. When Marissa opened the front door with her key, calling out, I'm home, Emma stood in the living room, arms crossed. Hey, sweetheart. Marissa dropped her overnight bag and approached Emma for a hug. Emma accepted it stiffly, not returning the embrace. Hi, Mom. Marissa pulled back, her smile faltering. Still mad at me? You missed a lot, Emma said simply. And you forgot my birthday. I know, I'm the worst. But I'm here now, and I'm going to make it up to you. Marissa turned to Neil, who'd positioned himself in the kitchen doorway. Hey, you. She crossed to him, and Neil let her kiss him, tasting expensive lipstick and betrayal. When she pulled back, she was searching his face. You okay? You seem tense. Just tired, Neil said easily. Work's been busy, but it's good to have you home. It's good to be home. Marissa looked around the house. Their house, which she'd barely visited in months. I miss this place. Liar, Neil thought. You've been living in a luxury apartment with ceiling mirrors, entertaining your boss's clients, and you've missed nothing. We should head to the field soon, Emma said, checking the time on her phone. Warm-ups start at 9:45. Right, yes. Marissa grabbed her purse. Let's go watch our star player. The soccer field was a 15-minute drive, part of the town's sports complex. It was a perfect fall morning. Blue sky, leaves turning gold and red, the smell of cut grass and autumn air. Other families were already setting up folding chairs on the sidelines, kids warming up on the field. Emma's team, the Oak Ridge Eagles, was stretching near their bench. Neil helped Emma with her gear, while Marissa chatted with other parents, sliding seamlessly back into the role of soccer mom. He watched her laugh and smile, saw how effortlessly she performed, and felt cold admiration for her skill. She'd been doing this for months, living one life in Riverside, another life here, switching between them without apparent strain. You've got this, Neil told Emma, adjusting her shin guards. Remember what we practiced? Find the space, use your speed. I will. Emma glanced at Marissa, then back to Neil. Thanks for always being here. The words hit harder than she probably intended. Neil squeezed her shoulder. Always. The game started at 10 sharp. Emma played striker, as her coach had suggested, and she was brilliant. She scored 2 goals in the first half, her small frame darting between defenders with the kind of strategic thinking Neil had taught her. On the sidelines, Marissa cheered loudly, recording on her phone, being the perfect proud mom. During halftime, she turned to Neil. She's gotten so good, and so tall. When did she get tall? Kids grow, Neil said neutrally, especially when you don't see them for weeks at a time. Marissa's smile tightened. I know I've been absent, but this job, Neil, the money I'm making is setting us up for life. Is it? Neil kept his eyes on the field. Because from where I'm sitting, money doesn't make up for being absent. That's not fair, isn't it? He finally looked at her. Emma needed you for her birthday. She needs you at games and school events. She needs her mom, not financial transfers. Marissa's eyes welled up. I'm trying to do what's best for all of us. Are you? Neil let the question hang there, loaded with meaning she couldn't possibly understand. Or are you doing what's best for you? Neil. Second half starting, he said, turning back to the field. The Eagles won 4-2, with Emma scoring one more goal in the final minutes. The team celebrated, parents congratulated each other, and Marissa took 100 photos, her earlier tension masked by maternal pride. They went out for lunch afterward. Emma's choice, a pizza place she loved. Marissa insisted on sitting next to Emma in the booth, peppering her with questions about school, friends, her favorite subjects. Emma answered in monosyllables, her responses polite but cold. Neil watched the dynamic, saw Marissa trying desperately to reconnect, and Emma building walls with every word. It would have broken his heart if his heart wasn't already shattered. Back home, Marissa tried to initiate intimacy. "I've missed you," she said in their bedroom, her hand on his chest. Neil felt revulsion, but forced himself to be calm. "I'm exhausted. Long week, the game, lunch. Can we rain check?" Her face fell. "We haven't. It's been over a month." "I know. I'm sorry. Tomorrow?" She nodded, hurt and confused, and Neil felt a grim satisfaction. Let her feel some fraction of what he'd felt. That evening, they ordered Chinese food and watched a movie, a family tradition from before everything fell apart. Emma sat on the opposite end of the couch from Marissa, and when Marissa tried to put her arm around her, Emma shifted away. Come on," Marissa pleaded. "Don't be like this." "Like what?" Emma's voice was ice. "Like someone whose mom forgot her birthday and disappeared for months?" "I didn't forget. I was late, yes, but I didn't forget. You forgot to call. You forgot I existed." Emma stood abruptly. "I'm going to my room." She left. Marissa looked at Neil helplessly. "She hates me." "She's hurt," Neil corrected. "There's a difference." "What do I do?" "Be present. Be consistent. Stop choosing work over her." He paused. "Stop choosing whatever else you're doing in Riverside over her." Marissa's face went pale. "What does that mean?" "It means," Neil said carefully, "that I think there's more to your time up there than just work." And Emma senses it too. Kids are perceptive. "There's nothing. I work constantly, Neil. The hotel, the renovation, the management issues." "Okay," Neil interrupted. He didn't want her defensive lies. Not yet. "Okay, then prove it. Be here more. Come home every weekend like you promised originally. Make Emma your priority." "I will," Marissa said quickly. "I promise I will. This job, it's almost over. Another 3 months, and they'll hire a permanent director for the Riverside property. Then I can work from home again or take a different role." 3 more months. 3 months, Neil echoed. 3 months she'd never have, because he was going to detonate her life long before that. Sunday was quieter. Marissa made pancakes for breakfast, attempted normal conversation, tried to rebuild bridges Emma wasn't ready to walk across. Neil maintained his role, present but distant, supportive but wary. He let Marissa interpret his behavior as stress and exhaustion rather than knowledge and strategy. Beverly texted at noon. "Available Monday afternoon for full debrief? What I found changes the game." Neil responded, "I'll come by your office at 2 p.m. At 3 o'clock, Marissa's phone buzzed with a call. She glanced at the screen, and Neil saw her entire body tense. "I need to take this," she said, standing quickly. "Work emergency." She went out to the backyard, and Neil watched through the window as she paced, her free hand gesturing animatedly. He couldn't hear the words, but her body language screamed stress and frustration. When she came back inside 10 minutes later, her face was tight. "I have to go back. Now." Neil let surprise color his voice. "You just got here. There's a major issue at the hotel. A contractor screwed up the ballroom renovation, and we have an event scheduled for Wednesday. I have to manage the fix." She was already gathering her things. "I'm so sorry. I wanted this weekend to be perfect." "It's fine," Emma said from the stairs, her voice dripping with bitter resignation. "We're used to it." "Emma, just go, Mom. We know where we rank." Marissa looked devastated, torn between defending herself and rushing back to Riverside. Neil almost felt bad for her. "Almost. I'll make it up to you both," she said. "I promise." "Okay," Neil said simply. "Drive safe." Marissa left at 4, her car disappearing down the street with a final apologetic wave. The moment she was gone, Emma turned to Neil. That wasn't a work call. No, Neil agreed. Probably wasn't. Are you going to follow her? Is that investigator following her? Beverly's on it, Neil confirmed. And tomorrow, I'm going to find out everything. Good. Emma's young face was hard with determination. I want them to pay, Dad. All of them. They will, Neil promised. But we do this smart. We build the case, we gather the evidence, and then we strike when they can't see it coming. Can you be patient a little longer? If it means they get what's coming, I could be patient forever. Neil pulled his daughter into a hug, this fierce, brilliant girl who'd had to grow up too fast, and swore to himself that before this was over, everyone responsible for breaking her childhood would face consequences. That night, he drafted an email to Beverly. She left early, claimed work emergency. Whatever you found, I'm ready to hear it. Time to plan the endgame. Monday morning couldn't come fast enough. Chapter 5. The Evidence. Beverly Dean's office was in a nondescript building in downtown Oak Ridge, sandwiched between a bail bondsman and a tax attorney. The waiting room smelled like stale coffee and old carpet, with outdated magazines scattered on a side table and a receptionist who barely looked up when Neil arrived. She's expecting you, the receptionist said, waving toward a door at the back. Beverly's office was small but efficient, desk covered with monitors and files, walls lined with filing cabinets, a whiteboard covered in what looked like a complex web of connections. Beverly herself sat behind the desk, reading glasses perched on her nose, looking more like a professor than a private investigator. Neil, close the door, she said without preamble. He did, settling into the chair across from her desk. You said what you found changes the game. It does. Beverly opened a folder and slid it across the desk. Let's start with the apartment. I got in Friday night. Building staff is easy to bribe if you flash enough cash and claim your corporate security doing a random inspection. What I found confirms our worst theories. The folder contained photos. Neil opened it and felt his stomach drop. The ceiling mirror in the entryway was just the first of several. The bedroom had another large mirror above the bed. The bathroom had strategic mirror placements. But worse than the mirrors were the cameras, small, professionally installed, hidden in smoke detectors, picture frames, and air vents. 6 cameras total, Beverly said. Bedroom, bathroom, living room. All recording to a central server that's likely off-site. Whoever set this up wasn't being subtle. They wanted comprehensive coverage. Ross, Neil said through gritted teeth. Almost certainly. But here's where it gets interesting. Beverly pulled up a file on her computer, turning the monitor so Neil could see. I traced the financial accounts you found in Marissa's emails. Over the past 6 months, she's received $127,000 in deposit from a shell company called Summit Hospitality Consulting. Neil's eyes widened. $127,000? Summit Hospitality is registered in Delaware, owned by another shell company, which is ultimately owned by, surprise, Ross Huff. He's using it to pay Marissa and probably others for consulting services. It's a layer of deniability if anyone asks questions. Others. Beverly pulled up another document. I found 2 more profiles on elite connections linked to the same payment structure. Different women, same setup. One is named Christy Short, works as a hospitality coordinator for Grandview Hotels. The other is Brooke Willis, listed as a client relations specialist. Both are on Grandview's payroll in legitimate-looking positions. Both have received payments from Summit Hospitality. Both have been photographed with Ross Huff at company events. He's running an entire operation, Neil said slowly, his mind racing. Using Grandview resources, company apartments, corporate positions as cover. Exactly. And the clients. Beverly pulled up more photos. I've identified 7 men who visited the apartment in the past 2 weeks. All have business connections to Ross or Grandview. Darren Pacheco is one. There's also Tyrone Potter, who owns a construction company that's done work for 4 Grandview properties. Wilson Tanner, who sits on the City Planning Commission and approved Grandview's last 3 development projects. Elmer Henry, a banker who's financed Grandview acquisitions. Neil stared at the photos. Successful-looking men in their 40s and 50s, arriving at the apartment in expensive cars, entering with the confidence of people who knew they were expected. This isn't just prostitution. This is corporate corruption. He's using these women to influence business deals. Bingo. And it's probably been going on for years in different cities, different properties. Riverside is just the current operation. The cameras suggest he's also creating insurance, blackmail material if any of these men ever become problems. Jesus Christ. Neil leaned back in his chair. Marissa, is she doing this willingly? Beverly's expression softened slightly. That's the question, isn't it? I've read through every communication I could access. Initially, it looks like she and Ross started as a genuine affair. But around month 3, he started introducing her to his networking strategy. The emails use language that suggests he positioned it as helping her career, impressing important clients, being a team player. Classic grooming language. But she took the money. She took the money, Beverly agreed. Whether she understood what she was really doing or whether Ross manipulated her into normalizing it gradually, I can't say definitively. But Neil? She participated for 6 months. She set up an escort profile. She entertained multiple men. At some point, willing or manipulated, she made choices. Neil felt the familiar rage, trying to surface, and pushed it down. What's our next move? Beverly leaned forward, her eyes sharp. We have options. Option 1. We take this to the police. What Ross is doing is probably criminal, fraud, possibly pandering, corporate malfeasance at minimum. But that's messy, slow, and Marissa would be implicated too. Option 2. We take it to Grandview Corporate. Ross is exposing them to massive liability. If we present this to their legal department or board of directors, they'll bury him to protect the company. Ross gets fired, possibly sued, definitely blacklisted from the industry. But again, Marissa's name comes up. Option 3. Neil asked, though he suspected he knew where this was going. Beverly smiled thinly. Option 3. We use what we know strategically. We don't just expose Ross. We dismantle his entire operation, discredit him professionally and personally, ensure he faces maximum consequences while protecting you and Emma from the fallout. That requires more planning, more precision, but the results are more satisfying. I want option 3, Neil said immediately, but I also want Marissa to face consequences. She doesn't get to walk away clean. Agreed. But those consequences should be on your terms. Divorce, custody, financial settlement that favors you. Not criminal charges that make Emma's mother a convicted felon. Neil saw the wisdom in this. Emma didn't need her mother in prison. She needed her father in control of the situation. What do you need from me? He asked. First, I need you to keep playing the unknowing husband for at least another week. Marissa can't suspect we're onto her. Second, I'm going to make contact with someone inside Grandview Corporate, someone who'd want to know what Ross is doing with company resources. Third, we're going to need legal help. I know an attorney, Edmund Bond, who specializes in complex divorces and corporate malfeasance. He's expensive but brilliant. Set up the meeting with Bond. What else? I'm going to coordinate with someone who can handle the technical side, hacking Ross's server where the camera footage is stored, documenting the full extent of his operation. I have a contact, Kelvin's cousin who? Jimmy Bird, Neil interrupted. The locksmith who also has other skills. Beverly raised an eyebrow. Kelvin told you about him. Kelvin mentioned he's good at accessing things people want kept private. He is. I'll bring him in. Between the two of us, we'll have everything Ross has tried to hide. Then we move. Neil nodded slowly, feeling the pieces falling into place. Timeline, 2 weeks. By then, we'll have complete documentation, corporate allies in place, legal strategy prepared. Then we trigger everything simultaneously. Expose Ross to Grandview Corporate, file for divorce with evidence that destroys any sympathy for Marissa, ensure all his clients know their activities have been recorded and could be released. Mutually assured destruction, Neil said. More like surgical strike. We hit every pressure point at once. Ross loses everything. Job, reputation, potentially facing criminal charges. Marissa loses her job, her relationship with Ross, and any moral high ground in the divorce. You get full custody, favorable financial settlement, and the satisfaction of watching them burn. It was elegant. It was ruthless. It was exactly what Neil wanted. Do it, he said. All of it. Beverly extended her hand. Then let's get to work. Neil shook it, feeling something dark and determined settle in his chest. For months, he'd been the unknowing victim. Now he was becoming something else entirely, an architect of consequences. One more thing, Beverly said as Neil stood to leave. When this goes down, it's going to be ugly. Marissa will likely try to blame you, to spin herself as the victim. Ross will lawyer up and fight. There will be media attention if the Grandview angle goes public. You need to be prepared for scorched earth. I'm prepared, Neil said. They've already burned everything that mattered. Now I'm returning the favor. Chapter 6, The Groundwork. The next 10 days were a masterclass in control deception. Neil maintained his routine with machine-like precision. Morning runs where he processed strategy, work days where he designed earthquake-resistant structures while planning to bring down Marissa and Ross's corrupt empire. Evenings with Emma, where he reassured her that justice was coming. Marissa called every other night, their conversations a study in surface-level normalcy. She complained about work stress, asked about Emma's schoolwork, made vague promises about coming home soon. Neil responded with carefully calibrated warmth. Not so enthusiastic that she'd suspect anything, not so cold that she'd sense danger. How's the hotel renovation going? He asked during one call, injecting genuine curiosity into his voice. Finally getting somewhere, Marissa said, sounding tired. The ballroom's back on track. Grand reopening gala is next Friday. Huge event, lots of VIPs. If it goes well, my job here might actually be done soon. That's great, Neil said, knowing that by next Friday, Marissa's job would be obliterated regardless of how the gala went. We miss you. I miss you both too. So much. Neil, I know things have been strained, but I swear once this is over, I'm going to make everything right. I believe you, Neil lied smoothly. We'll make it work. After she hung up, Emma emerged from the shadows of the hallway where she'd been listening. She sounds so normal. That's what makes her dangerous, Neil said. She's good at pretending. So are you now. Emma's observation wasn't judgmental, just factual. Learn from the best, Neil said dryly. Beverly worked methodically, her updates arriving via encrypted messages every few days. Day 3, Jimmy accessed Ross's server. Video archive goes back 18 months. Multiple women, multiple clients. Evidence of coercion in some cases. Day 5, made contact with Grandview's VP of Legal, Margaret Schultz. She's horrified and ready to move once we provide full documentation. Day 7, attorney Edmund Bond reviewed materials. He says we have an ironclad divorce case with evidence that ensures favorable custody and financial arrangements. Day 9, identified Ross's financial accounts. He's skimming money from Grandview expenses and the Summit hospitality payments. Corporate fraud on top of everything else. On day 10, Beverly requested a meeting at her office. Neil arrived to find her with 2 other people. Jimmy Bird, a wiry man in his 30s with nervous energy and laptop under his arm, and Edmund Bond, a silver-haired attorney in his 50s who radiated calculated intelligence. Let's talk in-game, Beverly said once everyone was settled. Edmund spoke first, his voice measured and confident. Neil, I've reviewed all evidence Beverly provided. For the divorce, you have overwhelming proof of adultery, financial misconduct, and behavior inconsistent with being a primary caregiver. California is a no-fault divorce state, but this evidence ensures you get favorable terms, primary physical custody of Emma, equitable division of assets that account for money Marissa misappropriated, and alimony unlikely given her income and behavior. How fast can we move? Neil asked. I can file papers tomorrow if you authorize it. But Beverly suggested we coordinate timing with the corporate exposure. Correct, Beverly said. Here's the sequence. This Friday is Grandview's gala, Ross's big showcase event. We let that go forward. Saturday morning, 3 things happen simultaneously. 1. Margaret Schultz at Grandview receives a comprehensive dossier on Ross's activities, supported by video evidence, financial records, and witness statements from the building's staff Jimmy and I interviewed. 2. Edmund files your divorce papers with supporting evidence. 3. Selected media outlets receive anonymous tips about a developing story involving Grandview hotels and executive misconduct. The gala is a success, and then Ross's world detonates overnight, Neil said slowly. He won't see it coming. Even better, Jimmy interjected, his voice quick and staccato. I've got access to his email and phone. We can track his movements, know when he's most vulnerable. I also found his insurance policy. He's been skimming video files of the most compromising client encounters onto a personal encrypted drive, probably planning to use them as leverage or blackmail. We can leak those to his clients as a warning that their activities aren't as private as they thought. Mutually assured destruction, Edmund noted. The clients won't press charges or make noise because they're implicated too. It contains the scandal while ensuring maximum damage to Ross. What about Marissa? Neil asked. What happens to her? She'll be fired immediately, Beverly said. Grandview won't keep her once Ross's operation is exposed. She's too connected to it. The divorce filing happens the same day, so she'll be dealing with career implosion and marital dissolution simultaneously. And Ross will likely throw her under the bus to save himself, claiming she initiated everything or acted independently. She did participate, Neil said, his voice hard, but he manipulated her into it, which is why we're not pushing for criminal charges against her, Edmund said. The divorce evidence is enough. She loses her marriage, her job, her reputation, and most importantly, she loses primary access to Emma. But she doesn't go to prison. Neil considered this. Part of him wanted maximum punishment for Marissa. But Emma's words echoed. I want them to pay. Not her. Them. His daughter's rage was directed at the situation, not solely at her mother. Destroying Marissa completely wouldn't help Emma. It would just traumatize her further. Okay, Neil said. We focus primary fire on Ross. Marissa faces natural consequences, job loss, divorce, reduced custody, but we don't actively destroy her beyond that. Smart, Beverly said. Now logistics. Neil, you need to act completely normal this week. Don't change routines. Don't hint at anything. Friday night, be home with Emma like always. Saturday morning at 9 a.m., Edmund files the papers and has Marissa serve at the Riverside apartment. At the same moment, Margaret Schultz convenes an emergency board meeting to address the Ross situation. By noon, this is all in motion. One more thing, Jimmy said, opening his laptop. Ross has been in contact with someone named Darren Monroe, another Grandview executive in their Seattle office. Based on communications, Monroe's been facilitating similar operations up there. This isn't just Riverside, it's a network. When we expose Ross, we should also hand over evidence about Monroe. Clean house completely. Agreed, Beverly said. We hand Grandview everything and let their legal department handle the fallout. Our job is Neil's situation, but we might as well burn down the whole operation. They spent another hour going over details. Who would deliver what information when backup plans if anything went wrong, coordinating the media tips to ensure maximum impact without exposing Beverly or Jimmy as sources. Edmund drafted the divorce filing right there, Neil reviewing and signing documents that would legally end his marriage. Walking out of Beverly's office that afternoon, Neil felt a strange calm. Everything was in place. The trap was set. In 5 days, the architecture he'd built, the evidence, the coordination, the precise timing would execute perfectly. He texted Marissa. Emma's soccer practice got canceled for weather. Want a video call her tonight? Marissa responded immediately. Yes. Miss her so much. 7 p.m.? Perfect. That evening, Emma sat on the couch with Neil's phone, video chatting with Marissa. Neil stayed in the background, listening to his wife ask their daughter about school, about friends, about weekend plans. Mom, can I ask you something? Emma said suddenly, her voice serious. Of course, honey. Anything. Are you happy up there? In Riverside. Marissa's face on the screen showed surprise. Happy? It's complicated, Em. The work is stressful, but it's important But are you happy? Emma interrupted. Or are you just pretending? There was a long pause. Neil could see Marissa's expression shifting. Guilt, defensiveness, uncertainty. I'm trying to build something for our family, Marissa finally said. Sometimes that means sacrificing happiness in the short term for security in the long term. That sounds like something an adult says when they don't want to admit they made a mistake, Emma said quietly. Emma, I'm going to bed. Good night, Mom. Emma ended the call before Marissa could respond. She handed the phone back to Neil, her face unreadable. That was brutal, Neil said, not unkindly. She's been lying to us for months, Emma said. She doesn't get easy conversations anymore. Neil hugged his daughter, this fierce, brilliant, wounded girl, and knew he was doing the right thing. Not just for himself, but for her. Friday arrived with the weight of an approaching storm. Neil went through his day normally. Work, lunch with Kelvin where he provided vague updates. Everything's happening soon. Picking Emma up from school. That evening, he and Emma ordered pizza and watched a movie, a normal Friday night. Meanwhile, 3 hours north in Riverside, Marissa was at the Grandview Hotel's grand reopening gala. Neil tracked it through social media. Instagram stories showing the renovated ballroom, elegantly dressed guests, champagne towers, Marissa in a stunning black dress, Ross Huff in a tuxedo playing the role of successful executive. The event looked flawless, the culmination of 18 months of work. It was also the high point before the fall. Neil received a text from Beverly at 10 p.m. Everything's in position. Tomorrow at 9 a.m., we execute. Sleep well. Tomorrow your new life starts. He didn't sleep well. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about how different everything would be in 24 hours. Marissa would be served with divorce papers. Ross would be facing termination and possible criminal investigation. The operation they'd built would be exposed and dismantled, and Neil and Emma would be free. At 6 a.m. Saturday, Neil woke to his alarm. He showered, made coffee, and checked his phone. Edmund had texted at 5 a.m., papers filed. Process server en route to Riverside. ETA 9 a.m. Beverly at 6:30 a.m. Margaret Schultz convening emergency board meeting at 9:30 a.m. Dossier delivered to her office this morning. Jimmy at 7 a.m. Media tips sent. Expect first inquiries to Grandview by midday. Everything was in motion. Emma came downstairs at 7:30, finding Neil in the kitchen. Is it happening? It's happening, Neil confirmed. Good. Emma poured herself cereal, her movements deliberate. What do? We wait, Neil said, and we be ready for whatever comes next. At 9:02 a.m., Neil's phone rang. Marissa's number. He let it ring for Neil. Marissa's voice was shaking. Neil, someone just served me with divorce papers. What? Why? I don't understand. Neil took a breath, and when he spoke, his voice was cold and clear. Because I know everything, Marissa. The apartment, Ross, the clients, the money, all of it. It's over. There was a shocked silence on the other end. Then, how did you? Does it matter? Neil interrupted. You've been living a double life for 6 months. You've been prostituting yourself and taking payments through a shell company. You've lied to me, to Emma, to everyone. So yes, I'm divorcing you. And yes, I'm taking full custody. Neil, wait, you don't understand, Rossi. He manipulated you, I know. He groomed you into this. But you still made choices, Marissa. And now you face consequences. Please, Marissa was crying now. Please, can we talk about this? I can explain. There's nothing to explain. My attorney will be in touch. Goodbye, Marissa. He hung up. Emma, who'd been listening from the hallway, came into the kitchen. Her eyes were wide. It's really happening. It's really happening, Neil confirmed. His phone rang again, Marissa calling back. He declined the call. It rang a third time. He blocked the number. Then he received a text from Beverly. Ross just got called into an emergency meeting with Schultz and the board. Margaret confirmed she received everything. He's going down. By noon, Ross Huff had been terminated from Grandview Hotels and escorted from the property by security. By 1 p.m., Marissa had been called and informed her position was also eliminated effective immediately. By 2 p.m., media outlets were reporting that Grandview Hotels was investigating allegations of executive misconduct. By 3 p.m., Neil's phone was flooded with messages, from Kelvin expressing satisfaction, from Beverly confirming success, from Edmund laying out next steps for the divorce proceedings, and from Marissa, via a new number he hadn't blocked yet, You've destroyed my life. Everything I worked for. How could you do this? Neil read the message, then deleted it without responding. How could he? Simple. Because she destroyed his life first. He was just returning the favor. Chapter 7. The Unraveling. The days following the explosion were chaos, but it was controlled chaos, the kind Neil had orchestrated and could therefore manage. Marissa called from 17 different numbers over the weekend before Neil changed his number entirely. Her messages oscillated between rage, bargaining, and desperate apologies. You're a bastard for ambushing me like this, please. Let's talk. I can explain everything. You're destroying Emma's relationship with her mother. Ross manipulated me. I'm a victim here too. I'll fight you on custody and I'll win. Neil forwarded everything to Edmund, who added each message to their evidence file. She's making this easier, Edmund noted during a Monday morning call. Every communication shows instability and poor judgment. Keep documenting everything, but don't respond. Emma read some of the messages. Neil didn't hide them from her, and her expression hardened further. She's not even asking about me, she observed. It's all about her. I noticed that too, Neil said quietly. At school Monday, Emma's teacher, Ms. Chan, requested a meeting. Neil arrived during his lunch break, finding her in the classroom organizing art supplies. Mr. West, Ms. Chan said, her expression concerned. Emma's been quieter lately, more withdrawn. I wanted to check in. Neil made a decision in that moment. Emma's teacher needed to know enough to support her. My wife and I are separating. It's been difficult, and Emma's processing a lot. I'm sorry to hear that. Is there anything I can do to help? Sometimes kids benefit from consistent routines at school when home life is unstable. That will be good, Neil said. And if Emma seems particularly down or needs to talk, I want her to know she has support here. Absolutely. We have a counselor available if you think that would help. Maybe. Let me talk to Emma about it. That evening, Neil brought it up over dinner. Your teacher noticed you've been quiet lately. She mentioned the school has a counselor if you want to talk to someone. Emma pushed food around her plate. Do you think I need one? I think talking to someone who isn't me might help. Someone who's not family, who can give you a safe space to process everything. Because I'm damaged now? Emma's voice was sharp. Because you're human, Neil corrected. And humans sometimes need help carrying heavy things. Emma considered this. Okay, I'll try it. Thank you for being open to it. Meanwhile, the professional fallout continued. Beverly sent daily updates that read like a corporate thriller. Day 3. Grandview's internal investigation confirmed Ross used company resources for personal gain. They're pursuing criminal charges for fraud and embezzlement. Day 5. Christy Short and Brooke Willis both resigned from Grandview. Short is cooperating with investigators. Willis is lawyering up. Day 7. Darren Pacheco's wife filed for divorce after learning about his involvement. 3 other clients have been quietly contacted by attorneys representing their wives. Day 9. Darren Monroe in Seattle has also been terminated. Network fully exposed. Ross, according to Jimmy's monitoring of his communications, was unraveling spectacularly. His attorney had advised him to stay quiet, but Ross was making desperate calls to former clients, to his ex-wives, to anyone who might provide financial support or character witnesses. No one was returning his calls. On day 11, Ross did something stupid. He contacted Neil directly. The email arrived late Wednesday night, sent from a new email address to Neil's work account. Subject, we need to talk. West, you've destroyed my career and my life over a personal matter that doesn't concern you. Your wife came to me willingly, participated willingly, and profited willingly. If you think you're some kind of hero here, you're delusional. I have resources. I have attorneys. And I will make sure everyone knows that Marissa was an active, enthusiastic participant in everything. She'll lose custody, lose credibility, lose everything. Is that what you want for Emma's mother? Call off your investigation, drop the divorce proceedings, and we can all move on with minimal damage. Continue this crusade, and I'll ensure maximum collateral damage. For Marissa, for your daughter, for you. Think carefully about your next move. R.H. Neil read the email 3 times, feeling cold satisfaction. Ross had just made multiple mistakes, threatening Neil directly, referencing the investigation, implying awareness of Neil's role in exposing him, and most importantly, putting threats in writing. He forwarded the email to Edmund, Beverly, and Jimmy with a simple message. He just gave us a gift. Edmund called within minutes. This is attempted blackmail and witness intimidation. I'm forwarding this to the prosecutor handling Ross's criminal case and a Grandview's legal team. He just handed us more ammunition. Good, Neil said. Ross is panicking, Edmund continued. Panicked men make mistakes. Let him keep digging his own grave. Beverly's text was more succinct. Idiot. Let him think you're considering his offer. String him along while we tighten the noose. Neil composed a response to Ross, carefully calibrated to sound uncertain. Ross, this is all spinning out of control faster than I anticipated. I never wanted to hurt Marissa or create this level of destruction. I need time to think about what you said. Give me a few days to talk to my attorney about options. NW. The response came within an hour. Reasonable. Take the time you need. But remember, the longer this goes on, the worse it gets for everyone, including your daughter. RH. He took the bait, Neil told Beverly over the phone. Now what? Now we let him think he has leverage while we complete our work. I'm coordinating with Margaret Schultz at Grandview. They want Ross prosecuted fully to protect the company from liability. The prosecutor is building a strong case. And we're documenting every communication Ross makes that could be construed as threats or intimidation. Timeline: 2 more weeks maximum before formal charges are filed. Your divorce case is already moving through court. Preliminary hearing is scheduled for 3 weeks from now. Marissa's attorney is trying to negotiate, but Edmund says your evidence is too strong for her to get anything beyond minimal custody and equitable asset division. And Marissa herself? How's she doing? Beverly's tone softened slightly. Not well, from what I can see. She's back in Oak Ridge, staying with her sister, Beverly, temporarily. Wait, your name is Beverly too? That's Beverly Dean. Marissa's sister is Beverly Stanley. Different people. Right, sorry. Continue. She's been to 3 attorneys trying to find one who'll tell her she has a case. None will take her on beyond basic representation. She's lost her job, her income, her relationship with Ross, who's now publicly blaming her for everything, and she knows she's losing Emma. It's a complete collapse. Neil should have felt satisfaction. Mostly he felt hollow. Does she deserve sympathy? She deserves accountability, Beverly said carefully. Sympathy is between you and your conscience. But Neil, don't let sympathy derail what you've built. She participated in 6 months of deception and exploitation. The consequences are appropriate. Agreed. On Friday of that week, Emma had her first session with the school counselor, Ms. Wagner. She came home quiet but less withdrawn. How was it? Neil asked as they prepared dinner together. She's nice. She said it's normal to feel angry and sad at the same time about Mom. It is normal. She asked if I miss Mom. Emma chopped vegetables with precise movements. I said I miss who I thought Mom was, not who she actually is. Neil's chest tightened. That's very insightful. Ms. Wagner said it's okay to grieve the version of someone even if that version wasn't real. Emma paused. Is that weird? No, Neil said gently. That's healthy. Emma nodded, then added quietly, I'm glad you didn't lie to me. About what Mom did. Ms. Wagner said some parents try to protect their kids by lying, but then the kids don't understand why everything's falling apart. You deserve the truth, Neil said. You're strong enough to handle it. Sometimes I don't feel strong, Emma admitted. Sometimes I feel like everything's broken. Neil pulled her into a hug. Everything is broken, but we're going to build something new, something honest. Just you and me. Just us, Emma echoed, and Neil felt her relax slightly in his arms. Saturday afternoon brought an unexpected visitor. Neil answered the door to find Beverly Stanley, Marissa's sister, Emma's aunt, standing on the porch. She looked exhausted, her eyes red-rimmed, her expression a mixture of anger and desperation. Neil, can we talk? Neil considered sending her away, but curiosity won out. Emma's at a friend's house. You have 10 minutes. They sat in the living room, Beverly perched on the edge of the couch, Neil in the armchair across from her. Marissa's destroyed, Beverly said without preamble. I've never seen her like this. She's staying with me because she has nowhere else to go. She's barely eating, barely sleeping. She just sits and cries. And you're here to make me feel guilty? Neil asked flatly. I'm here to ask what it would take for you to ease up, to give her a chance to rebuild some kind of life, to let her have joint custody of Emma instead of minimum visitation. No, Neil said simply. Neil, she destroyed our family for money and excitement. She lied to me for 6 months. She put Emma in a position to accidentally discover her mother's affair in the most traumatic way possible. She spent $40,000 of our joint money on herself while depositing a fraction of that into savings and calling it building our future. She entertained her boss's clients for cash. She's lucky I'm not pushing for criminal charges. Beverly's face crumpled. She made terrible choices. I know that. But Ross manipulated her. Ross created opportunities. Marissa took them, repeatedly, for 6 months. Neil leaned forward. Beverly, I understand she's your sister and you love her. But she doesn't get to escape consequences because she's sad. She needs to face what she did. What about Emma? Doesn't she need her mother? She needs a mother who's present, honest, and puts her first. Marissa hasn't been that person in a year. Until she proves she can be, Emma's better off with limited contact. Beverly stood abruptly. You're being cruel. I'm being protective, Neil corrected. There's a difference. After she left, Neil sat in the quiet living room, questioning himself for the first time. Was he being too harsh? Was he letting revenge override Emma's needs? Then he remembered Emma's face when she dragged him away from that apartment door. Remembered her crying in the car. Remembered her saying, Mom forgot I existed. No, he wasn't being too harsh. He was being exactly as protective as Emma needed. Chapter 8, The Trial. The preliminary custody hearing was scheduled for a gray Tuesday in late November. Edmund had advised Neil extensively on courtroom behavior. Stay calm, stick to facts, let the evidence speak, don't let Marissa's attorneys provoke emotional responses. They'll try to paint you as vindictive and controlling, Edmund warned. They'll argue that you're using Emma as a weapon. Don't take the bait. You're simply a father protecting his daughter from an unstable situation. The courtroom was smaller than Neil expected, wood-paneled and austere. He sat at one table with Edmund and Beverly, the PI, not the sister. Marissa sat at the other table with her attorney, a brittle-looking woman named Dana Lloyd who had a reputation for aggressive tactics in family law cases. Marissa looked terrible, gaunt, exhausted, wearing a conservative suit that probably came from her sister's closet. When their eyes met, Neil saw a mixture of anger, grief, and pleading. He looked away. Emma was not present. Children her age typically didn't attend preliminary hearings unless the judge specifically requested it. She was at school, probably in Ms. Wagner's office, waiting for Neil to text her when it was over. Judge Marguerite Moody entered, a black woman in her 60s with silver hair and an expression that suggested she'd seen every family law game in the book and wasn't interested in nonsense. Everyone stood, then sat at her gesture. This is a preliminary hearing to address temporary custody arrangements for Emma West, age 10, while divorce proceedings are ongoing between Neil and Marissa West. Judge Moody began, reviewing her notes. Mr. Bond, you filed for your client to have primary physical custody with limited supervised visitation for Mrs. West. That's an extreme position. Justify it. Edmund stood. Your Honor, the evidence we've submitted demonstrates that Mrs. West engaged in a pattern of deception, financial misconduct, and behavior that directly harmed the child's emotional well-being over a period of 6 months. She was living a double life, involved in activities that would expose her, and by extension, Emma, to dangerous individuals and situations. She has shown no accountability for her choices, and her instability makes unsupervised custody a risk. Dana Lloyd stood, her voice sharp. Your Honor, my client made mistakes within her marriage. Adult mistakes that have nothing to do with her capability as a mother. Mr. West is weaponizing those mistakes to alienate Emma from her mother. Marissa loves her daughter and has been an excellent parent for 10 years. This is a clear case of vindictive litigation. Judge Moody held up a hand. I've read the filed evidence. Mrs. West You engaged in an extramarital affair with your supervisor, accepted payments through a shell company for what was essentially escort services, and spent significant marital funds without your husband's knowledge. Correct. Marissa stood shakily. Your Honor, I was manipulated by my supervisor. He groomed me into a situation I didn't fully understand. Did he force you? Judge Moody interrupted. No, but did he physically threaten you? No. Did you take payments willingly? Marissa's face crumpled. Yes. Did you lie to your husband and daughter about your activities? Yes. Sit down. Judge Moody's tone wasn't cruel, but it was unforgiving. Ms. Lloyd, your client is an adult who made adult choices. The question before me isn't whether she was manipulated. I'm sure she was, to some degree. The question is whether those choices demonstrate the kind of judgment and stability required for primary custody of a 10-year-old child. Dana Lloyd looked like she wanted to argue, but couldn't find solid ground. Your Honor, removing primary custody would devastate Marissa's relationship with Emma. Children need their mothers. Children need stable, honest parents, Judge Moody corrected. Mr. Bond, you've requested supervised visitation. Explain your reasoning. Edmund stood again. Emma accidentally discovered her mother's affair in a traumatic manner. Since then, Mrs. West has made no genuine effort to repair that relationship. Her communications have focused on her own situation rather than her daughter's emotional needs. We believe supervised visitation allows for relationship repair while protecting Emma from further manipulation or inappropriate conversations about the divorce. Mrs. West, Judge Moody addressed Marissa directly. Have you sought counseling or therapy to address the issues that led to your choices? Not yet, Your Honor. Everything happened so quickly. Not quickly enough to prevent 6 months of deception, Judge Moody said dryly. Mr. West, has your daughter expressed preferences about custody? Neil stood. Yes, Your Honor. Emma has stated clearly that she wants to live primarily with me. She loves her mother, but doesn't currently trust her. She's willing to see her mother in supervised settings, but isn't comfortable with unsupervised time. How old is Emma? 10, Your Honor. Old enough to have her preferences weighed significantly. Judge Moody made notes. Here's my ruling for temporary custody pending final divorce proceedings. Primary physical custody to Mr. Neil West. Mrs. Marissa West will have supervised visitation every other Saturday for 4 hours. Location to be agreed upon by both parties. Supervisor to be a professional court-appointed monitor. Therapy is required for Mrs. West. She will provide proof of ongoing sessions to the court. Family therapy involving Emma is recommended, but not required unless Emma consents. Dana Lloyd stood quickly. Your Honor, 4 hours every other week is insufficient. Ms. Lloyd, your client is lucky I'm not limiting it further given the evidence. She can work on rebuilding trust during those hours and petition for increased time if she demonstrates stability and genuine effort at repair. This ruling stands unless circumstances change significantly. Bang went the gavel. Neil felt something release in his chest. Not celebration. Emma still had a long road ahead, but relief. He'd protected her. The system had worked. Marissa was crying silently, her attorney's arm around her shoulders. Neil felt a flicker of something. Not sympathy exactly, but recognition of shared loss. They'd built a life together, and now it was rubble. Outside the courtroom, Edmund clapped Neil's shoulder. That was the best outcome we could have hoped for. Judge Moody saw through Lloyd's tactics immediately. What happens next? Divorce proceeds. We're still negotiating asset division, but the custody decision strengthens your position on everything else. Marissa's attorney will push for better financial settlement since her client lost on custody, but your evidence of her spending mitigates that. We'll likely settle out of court within 6 to 8 weeks. Beverly, the PI, joined them. Roshoff was formally charged this morning with fraud, embezzlement, and witness intimidation based on his email to you. Prosecutor says they have a strong case. He's looking at potential jail time. Good, Neil said simply. He went to pick up Emma from school, finding her in Ms. Wagner's office as expected. She looked up as he entered, her face anxious. Primary custody to me, Neil said quietly. Supervised visitation for your mom every other Saturday. Emma's shoulders dropped with relief. So I don't have to stay with her? Not unless you want to. And not without supervision. I don't want to yet, Emma said. Maybe later. When she's different. That's okay. That's your choice. Emma hugged him tightly. Thank you for protecting me. Neil held his daughter, this brave, wounded girl, and promised silently that he always would. Chapter 9. The Reconstruction. 3 months later, on a bright February morning, Neil signed the final divorce decree in Edmund's office. Marissa had signed her copy the day before, not contesting the terms after her attorney advised that fighting would only drain her finances further without changing the outcome. The settlement was straightforward. Neil retained primary physical custody of Emma. Marissa had supervised visitation every other Saturday, with potential for reevaluation after 6 months of therapy compliance. Assets divided 60/40ths in Neil's favor due to Marissa's misappropriation of marital funds. No spousal support given Marissa's earning capacity and misconduct. Emma's college fund, which Neil had been contributing to consistently, remained untouched and under his control. It's done, Edmund said, sliding the signed documents into a folder. You're officially single. How's Marissa handling it? Neil asked, not sure why he cared. According to Dana Lloyd, she's living with her sister, working part-time in event planning, attending therapy twice a week. She's compliant with the visitation schedule and, apparently, trying to turn her life around. Whether that's genuine or strategic, time will tell. Neil thought about this. Marissa's last supervised visit with Emma, 2 weeks ago, had been awkward but less hostile. Marissa had asked Emma about school, soccer, her art projects. She hadn't mentioned the divorce or tried to badmouth Neil. It was a small step, but it was something. What about Ross? Neil asked. Trials in April. Prosecutors confident. Between the financial evidence, the video documentation Jimmy provided, and testimony from Christy Short, they have him dead to rights. He's likely looking at 3 to 5 years. Good. Neil left Edmund's office feeling oddly empty. He'd spent 4 months fighting, strategizing, protecting Emma, and destroying the people who'd hurt them. Now, it was over, and he had to figure out what came next. Emma was at soccer practice. She'd joined a competitive spring league and was thriving. Neil drove to the field, arriving early enough to watch the last 15 minutes. Emma played with fierce concentration, her small frame darting between defenders, setting up plays for her teammates. When she scored a goal, her teammates mobbed her in celebration. After practice, they went to their favorite pizza place, the same one they'd gone to with Marissa months ago, though neither mentioned that. Coach says there's a tournament in Sacramento next month, Emma said, demolishing a slice of pepperoni. Can we go? Absolutely. I'll request time off. Cool. Emma took another bite, then added casually, I saw Mom on Saturday. I know. How was it? Weird. She asked about my grades and my art project for school. She didn't cry this time. That's progress. I guess. Emma was quiet for a moment. Ms. Wagner says it's okay to be mad at Mom, and also hope she gets better. That both feelings can exist. Ms. Wagner's smart. She says you are too, for how you handled everything. Neil felt unexpected emotion tighten his throat. I just did what I thought was right. You did, Emma said seriously. You protected us. You didn't let them get away with hurting us. That matters. It does, Neil agreed. That night, after Emma went to bed, Neil sat in his home office looking at the plans for a new project at work, a children's hospital that needed to be earthquake-resistant, but also welcoming and non-threatening for young patients. It was the kind of challenge he loved, complex engineering with human stakes. His phone buzzed with a text from Kelvin. Heard the divorce is final. Be here tomorrow to celebrate? Neil smiled slightly and texted back, sure. Marlowe's at 7. Perfect. Proud of you, brother. You played it smart and came out on top. Thanks. Couldn't have done it without your help. That's what brothers do. Neil set down the phone and looked around the office. Photos of Emma covered the walls, her at various soccer games, school events, birthdays. Marissa was in some of the older photos, smiling and present. He'd have to decide eventually whether to keep those or put them away. Maybe Emma should decide. They were her memories, too. A sound from the hallway made him look up. Emma stood in the doorway in her pajamas, looking small and young in the way she rarely did anymore. "Can't sleep?" Neil asked. "Bad dream." She came in and sat in the chair across from his desk. "About the apartment. About that day." Neil's chest tightened. "What happened in the dream? I didn't pull you away in time. You saw everything. And then you were so angry that you left too. And I was alone." I know it's not real," Emma interrupted. "I know you're not going anywhere. But sometimes my brain forgets." Neil came around the desk and crouched in front of her chair. "I'm not going anywhere. Ever. You're stuck with me until you go to college. And even then, I'm going to call every day and embarrass you." Emma smiled slightly. "Promise. Promise. We're a team, remember? Just us. Just us," Neil confirmed. Emma hugged him, and they stayed like that for a while. When she finally pulled back, her expression was more settled. "Dad, do you think Mom will ever be okay?" "I think she has a chance," Neil said carefully, "if she does the work. If she gets honest with herself about what she did and why. But that's her journey. We can hope for her without carrying the weight of fixing her. Ms. Wagner says that too, that we can care without carrying." "Smart woman." Emma stood. "I'm going back to bed. Tournament's in 5 weeks. I need to get sleep for training." "Good night, sweetheart." "Good night, Dad. Love you." "Love you too." After she left, Neil sat at his desk and opened a new document on his computer. He titled it, Lessons Learned. He wrote, 1. Trust is built slowly and destroyed instantly. Guard it carefully. 2. Some people will show you who they are if you pay attention. Believe them. 3. When foundations crack, you have 2 choices. Shore them up or tear down and rebuild. Choose wisely. 4. Revenge isn't about destruction. It's about consequences meeting choices. 5. Protect those who can't protect themselves, even when it's hard. 6. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is ask for help. 7. Justice and mercy aren't opposites. Both have their place. 8. Build your life on honesty, even when lies would be easier. 9. Your children are watching how you handle adversity. Teach them well. 10. In the end, integrity matters more than victory. He looked at the list, then printed it and pinned it to the corkboard above his desk next to photos of Emma. For months ago, his life had shattered. He'd discovered betrayal, orchestrated exposure, fought for his daughter, and emerged victorious. But victory wasn't about Marissa's ruin or Ross's imprisonment. It was about building something new from the rubble. Something honest. Something strong. He and Emma would be okay. More than okay. They'd be better than before because now their foundation was solid. No mirrors, no angles, no hidden cameras or secret lives. Just truth in each other. Neil closed his laptop, turned off the office light, and went upstairs. He checked on Emma one more time. She was sleeping peacefully, her breathing steady. He stood in her doorway for a moment. This fierce, brilliant daughter who'd been forced to grow up too fast, but who'd emerged stronger for it. Then he went to his own room, to the bed he no longer shared with anyone, and felt something he hadn't felt in months. Peace. The architecture of his revenge had been perfect, precise, calculated, destructive. But the architecture of his reconstruction would be better. Built on bedrock instead of sand. Built to last. Outside, the February night was clear and cold. Stars scattered across the darkness like points of light in a vast structure. Neil looked at them through the window and thought about how even in the absence of light, there were always points to navigate by. He'd been lost for a while, but now he knew exactly where he was going. Forward. Always forward. With Emma beside him, that was enough. Epilogue. 6 months later, Rossoff was sentenced to 4 years in federal prison for fraud, embezzlement, and witness intimidation. His assets were seized to pay restitution to Grandview Hotels. His name became synonymous with corporate corruption in hospitality industry publications. Marissa completed her therapy requirements and rebuilt a modest career in event coordination. Her visits with Emma gradually increased to unsupervised time as Emma chose, though their relationship remained cautious. She never remarried. Emma continued to thrive, leading her soccer team to a regional championship and developing a talent for engineering and design that made Neil ridiculously proud. She saw her mother regularly, but lived full-time with Neil, which they both preferred. Neil took a promotion at his firm and started designing schools and public spaces, architecture that served communities rather than corporations. He dated occasionally, but wasn't a rush. He had Emma, he had work he believed in, and he had peace. That was more than enough. The mirror from the Riverside apartment was removed when Grandview renovated the unit. It was destroyed along with all the other materials from Ross's operation. Sometimes, late at night when the house was quiet, Neil thought about that day Emma had pulled him away from the door. How one moment of innocent discovery had unraveled everything. How destruction had led to reconstruction. He thought about foundations and earthquakes, about structures that withstood pressure and those that crumbled, about the difference between appearing strong and being strong. And he knew, with absolute certainty, that he'd made the right choices. Not the easy ones, not the ones that preserved comfort or avoided pain, but the right ones. And in the end, that was all that mattered. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.
Welcome back to another story on Infidelity Tales Lab. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Perfect Life Unraveled. Mitchell Becker had built his life like a fortress. Methodical, calculated, and impenetrable. At 45, he owned 3 successful auto dealerships across the state, a testament to his ruthless business acumen honed during his 8 years as a Marine Corps intelligence officer. His wife Jennifer Weeks had been his college sweetheart, and Tyler Lawson, his adopted son, was now 18 and preparing for college. The suburban home in Millbrook Hills reflected Mitchell's success. Manicured lawns, a 3-car garage, and security cameras he'd installed himself. Old habits from his military days never died. Trust was earned, never given freely, and verification was always required. On this particular Saturday morning, Jennifer claimed she was visiting her sister Monica Dickinson in the city. Tyler had left early for his part-time job at the electronics store. Mitchell decided to tackle the spring cleaning Jennifer had been nagging him about for weeks. Tyler's room was a disaster zone of teenage chaos. As Mitchell moved the bed to vacuum underneath, his foot struck something solid. Hidden beneath was a locked metal box, military grade, the kind used to store sensitive documents. Mitchell's instincts, sharpened by years of intelligence work, immediately kicked in. The box was too heavy for documents. His lockpicking skills, rusty but functional, made quick work of the mechanism. Inside lay neat stacks of $100 bills, easily $15,000, alongside a basic flip phone and a small notebook filled with dates, times, and cryptic abbreviations. Mitchell's blood ran cold as he recognized some of the locations: parking lots near his dealerships, restaurants where he frequently conducted business meetings. The phone's call log showed dozens of outgoing calls to the same number over the past 6 months. As Mitchell examined the device, it suddenly rang. The caller ID showed only BH. Against his better judgment, Mitchell answered. "Tyler." A deep, gravelly voice asked. "The delivery is ready. Usual place, midnight." Mitchell remained silent, his military training taking over. Never reveal information unless absolutely necessary. "Tyler, you there? Don't forget, your mom's cut depends on this going smooth. Brian's getting antsy about the timeline." The line went dead. Mitchell stared at the phone, pieces of a horrifying puzzle beginning to form. Brian, he'd heard Jennifer mention a Brian from her yoga class. The money, the secret of phone calls, the coordinated schedule. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Mitchell quickly replaced everything in the box and slid it back under the bed, but kept the phone. As he stood, Tyler appeared in the doorway, his face pale. "Dad, I thought you were at the office." "Change of plans," Mitchell replied evenly, studying his adopted son's nervous demeanor. How was work? Fine. Boring. You know. Tyler's eyes darted to the bed, then back to Mitchell. Mom's not back yet. Still at Aunt Monica's. Mitchell watched Tyler's relief wash over his face. Son, is there anything you need to tell me? For a moment, Tyler's composure cracked. His mouth opened as if to speak, then closed. No, Dad. Nothing important. Mitchell nodded slowly. In interrogation training, they taught him that the most dangerous lies were wrapped in kernels of truth. His own son, the boy he'd raised, taught to drive, helped with homework, was lying to his face. As Tyler retreated to his room, Mitchell heard him making a hushed phone call. The words were muffled, but the panic in his voice was unmistakable. That evening, Jennifer returned home with shopping bags and a bright smile that now seemed forced. She chatted about her day with Monica, describing lunch at a restaurant Mitchell knew for a fact had been closed for renovations all week. As they sat down for dinner, Mitchell observed his family with new eyes. Jennifer's nervous laughter at his jokes. Tyler's inability to meet his gaze. The way they exchanged quick glances when they thought he wasn't watching. 22 years of marriage. 18 years of fatherhood. All of it built on what foundation? Later that night, as Jennifer slept beside him, Mitchell lay awake planning. In the Marines, they taught him that the most effective operations began with comprehensive intelligence gathering. He had 11 hours until that midnight meeting. 11 hours to learn just how deep this betrayal ran. The burner phone sat in his nightstand drawer like a loaded weapon. Tomorrow, Mitchell Becker would begin the hunt for truth. And if his suspicions proved correct, he would show no mercy to those who had dared to betray him. Chapter 2. The Moment of Truth. Mitchell spent Sunday morning acting the part of the perfect suburban husband. He made pancakes, discussed Tyler's college plans, and listened to Jennifer's animated story about Monica's new boyfriend. Every word felt like acid in his throat, but his face remained impassive. At 11:30 p.m., Mitchell positioned himself in his study with a clear view of the driveway. The burner phone sat on his desk, a digital countdown to betrayal. At 11:45, Tyler crept downstairs, car keys in hand. Mitchell waited 5 minutes before following in his other vehicle, a skill learned during surveillance operations in Fallujah. Tyler drove to Riverside Park, a secluded area near the old industrial district. Hidden behind a cluster of trees, Mitchell watched through binoculars as his son met with a tall, broad-shouldered man in his 40s. Brian Hagan was exactly what Mitchell had expected. Confident, predatory, with the kind of swagger that attracted bored housewives. The exchange was brief. Tyler handed over a manila envelope. Brian passed him a thick bundle of cash. But it was the third figure emerging from the shadows that stopped Mitchell's heart. Jennifer stepped into the moonlight, her arms wrapping around Brian's waist as they kissed with obvious familiarity. She laughed at something Brian whispered, the same laugh that had charmed Mitchell 22 years ago. Tyler stood awkwardly nearby, checking his phone. The family meeting lasted 10 minutes before they separated. Brian and Jennifer heading toward a motel on the outskirts of town, Tyler returning home. Mitchell beat Tyler home by minutes, settling back in his study with the lights off. When Tyler crept back inside, Mitchell was waiting. Successful evening? Mitchell asked, switching on the desk lamp. Tyler jumped, dropping his keys. Dad, you scared me. I was just getting some air. Mitchell stood slowly, his imposing frame filling the doorway. That's interesting. Because 30 minutes ago, you were getting cash from a man named Brian Hagan. The color drained from Tyler's face. I don't know what. Sit down. Mitchell's voice carried the command authority that had once ordered Marines into combat. Tyler collapsed into the nearest chair. How long? Mitchell asked simply. Tyler's hands shook as he stared at the floor. Dad, I can explain. How long? 6 months, Tyler whispered. Maybe 7. And what exactly have you been delivering to Brian Hagan for 6 months? Information. The words came out as a croak. About your business meetings. Your schedules. When you'd be at which dealership. Sometimes about your personal stuff too. Mitchell felt something cold and final settle in his chest. What kind of personal stuff? Bank statements you left in your home office. Passwords you wrote down. Your gun's safe combination. Tyler finally looked up, tears streaming down his face. Dad, I never meant for it to go this far. They said it was just. They. Mom and Brian. They said they needed to know these things for planning. Planning what? Tyler's silence stretched until Mitchell stepped closer. The boy who had once been his pride and joy flinched away. Tyler. Planning what? Your accident, Tyler whispered. The words hung in the air like poison gas. Mitchell felt his world tilt on its axis. Not just an affair. Not just theft. Murder. Explain. They've been planning it for months. Brian knows people. Dangerous people. They're going to make it look like a carjacking gone wrong. Tomorrow night, when you leave the downtown dealership. They know you always take the same route home. Mitchell's mind raced through the implications. The life insurance policies Jennifer had encouraged him to increase last year. The way she'd been pushing him to update his will. The sudden interest in his business schedules. And after my accident, Mom inherits everything. She and Brian are planning to sell the dealerships and move to Costa Rica. They already have a house picked out. And you? Tyler looked up with desperate hope. I thought maybe we could all go together. Like a family. The naivety was almost touching. Almost. Did you really think, Mitchell said softly, that after they killed me, they'd keep you around as a witness? Tyler's face went white as the full realization hit him. They wouldn't. Son, you've been working for people planning to murder your father. What exactly did you think your life expectancy was after I was gone? For the first time, Tyler seemed to grasp the magnitude of his situation. Dad, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'll help you stop them. I'll tell the police everything. Mitchell studied the young man who had called him Dad for 18 years. The boy he'd taught to ride a bike, helped with algebra homework, cheered for at baseball games. The same boy who had just confessed to helping plan his murder. Tyler, Mitchell said quietly, there are some things that can't be forgiven. But Dad, you made your choice 6 months ago. Every meeting, every piece of information, every dollar you took. You chose them over me. Mitchell walked to the window, looking out at the suburban paradise that had been built on lies. Now you'll live with that choice. What are you going to do? Mitchell turned back to face his son, and Tyler shrank away from the cold calculation in his eyes. I'm going to give them exactly what they want, with a few modifications of my own. I don't understand. You will. Mitchell moved toward the door, then paused. Tyler, pack a bag. You won't be living here much longer. As Mitchell climbed the stairs to the bedroom where his wife lay sleeping, his mind was already working through the tactical requirements. Jennifer and Brian wanted him dead by tomorrow night. They would get their wish, in a manner of speaking. But first, Mitchell Becker was going to show them what happened when someone tried to kill a man trained in psychological warfare. The game had begun, and Mitchell intended to win. Chapter 3. The Hunter Becomes the Hunted. Mitchell woke before dawn, Jennifer still sleeping peacefully beside him. Looking at her face, the same face he'd kissed on their wedding day, he felt nothing but cold purpose. She stirred as he rose, offering a sleepy smile that had once meant everything to him. Early meeting? She asked. Something like that. Mitchell leaned down and kissed her forehead, a gesture of farewell she didn't understand. I'll be working late tonight. Don't wait up. By 6 a.m., Mitchell was in his study, calling Phil West, his former Marine Corps buddy who now ran a private security firm in the city. Phil owed Mitchell several favors from their Fallujah days. Mitch. Christ, It's early. What's the situation? I need a safe house, untraceable communication equipment, and a favor I can't explain over the phone. Phil's voice sharpened immediately. How bad? Family's compromised. I need to disappear for a few days. Say no more. I've got a cabin upstate. Off the grid, fully stocked. I'll text you the coordinates. Phil. This stays between us. If anyone comes asking, law enforcement, private investigators, anyone, you've never heard from me. Copy that. Mitch. Watch your six out there. Mitchell's next call was to Annette Hunter, his attorney and former romantic interest from his pre-Jennifer days. Annette had never married, focusing instead on building one of the most feared legal practices in the state. Mitchell. This is unexpected. Annette, I need legal advice off the record. If someone were planning my murder, what would be the most effective way to protect my assets and ensure the perpetrators received nothing? A long pause. Jesus. Mitchell. Are you serious? Deadly serious. My office. 1 hour. Come alone and use the rear entrance. Mitchell spent the next 30 minutes transferring funds from joint accounts to his personal accounts, changing passwords, and accessing his gun safe. The Glock 19 felt familiar in his hands, an old friend from darker days. At Annette's office, he laid out the situation with military precision. Her face grew progressively paler as he detailed Tyler's confession and the planned accident. We need to contact the police immediately, she said. No. Mitchell's voice was granite. Tyler's confession would be worthless. He's a minor, and his testimony alone wouldn't be enough for conviction. They'd be arrested, make bail, and disappear before trial. Jennifer knows about the offshore accounts I've been setting up for retirement. She could access enough money to vanish. Then what do you propose? I'm going to let them think they've succeeded. Annette leaned back in her chair. Elaborate. Tonight, Mitchell Becker dies in what appears to be a carjacking gone wrong. My truck will be found burned out in the industrial district. Blood evidence will suggest I was killed and my body dumped elsewhere. And in reality, I'll be hunting them. Mitchell's smile was predatory. I want you to set up a new will, effective immediately. Everything goes to charity, St. Jude's, Wounded Warrior Project, organizations Jennifer despises. She gets nothing. Mitchell, this is insane. You're talking about faking your own death. I'm talking about survival. They think they're playing chess with a suburban car dealer. They're about to learn they're facing someone who spent 8 years conducting psychological operations against people who invented the game. Annette was quiet for a long moment. What do you need from me? Legal coverage for what comes next. And an alibi if anyone asks where I've been today. That afternoon, Mitchell executed phase 1 of his plan. He visited each of his dealerships, making sure to be seen by multiple witnesses. At the downtown location, he made a show of staying late, working in his office until 9 p.m. when most of the staff had gone home. At 9:15, he called Tyler from his office phone. Dad. Mom said you were working late. Change of plans. I'm heading home now. Taking the usual route. Mitchell paused. Tyler. I want you to know, despite everything, I love you. Remember that. Dad, you're scaring me. What's? Mitchell hung up. By 9:30, he was in his truck, following his normal route home. But instead of continuing straight at the industrial district intersection, he turned left into the maze of abandoned warehouses. Phil West was waiting with a second vehicle and a duffel bag. Blood packets in the cab, remote incendiary device in the engine compartment, Phil reported. This thing will burn hot and fast once triggered. You sure about this? I'm sure. Mitchell climbed out of his truck, activating the blood packets and spreading the contents across the driver's seat and dashboard. Give me 10 minutes to clear the area. As Mitchell drove away in Phil's nondescript sedan, he triggered the incendiary device. In his rearview mirror, His truck erupted in flames that would burn for hours, destroying any chance of forensic analysis. By 11 p.m., he was at Phil's cabin, monitoring police scanners and local news feeds. The story broke at midnight. Prominent businessman Mitchell Becker's vehicle found burned in industrial district. Blood evidence suggests foul play. Police investigating possible carjacking. At 12:30 a.m., Mitchell's burner phone, a different one from Tyler's cache, rang. "Is it done?" Jennifer's voice, breathless with excitement. "Clean as a whistle," came Brian Hagan's reply. "Truck's still burning. Cops think it was a random carjacking. No body means they'll spend weeks searching the river. And the police won't connect it to us? How could they? I was in Atlantic City all night. Got hotel receipts and casino surveillance to prove it. Your alibi's solid too." "What about Tyler?" "Kid doesn't know the details. Far as he's concerned, his dad got carjacked by random criminals. He's grieving, but he'll get over it." Jennifer laughed. Actually laughed. "God, I can't believe it's finally over. When can we access the accounts?" "Death certificate takes about a week. Then we cash out and disappear. Costa Rica, here we come." As the call ended, Mitchell felt the last vestiges of his old life die. His wife was celebrating his murder. His son was complicit in his death. Everything he'd built, everything he'd believed in, had been a lie. But Mitchell Becker wasn't dead. And the people who thought they'd killed him were about to learn what true terror felt like. The hunt was about to begin. Chapter 4. Gathering Intelligence. For 3 days, the world believed Mitchell Becker was dead. Local news ran the story. His dealerships released statements expressing shock and grief, and funeral arrangements were being planned. From his cabin hideout, Mitchell watched it all with cold detachment, using surveillance equipment Phil had provided to monitor his own memorial service. Jennifer played the grieving widow perfectly. Dressed in black, dabbing her eyes with tissues, accepting condolences from friends and business associates. Tyler stood beside her, genuinely shaken by what he believed was his father's actual death. The boy's guilt was written across his face. He thought his information had led to a real murder. But Mitchell was learning things that made his blood boil. Through directional microphones and hidden cameras Phil had installed around his house, he discovered the full scope of their betrayal. "The life insurance alone is $2 million, Jennifer told Brian during one of their phone conversations. Plus the business valuations, the house, the investment accounts. We're looking at close to $8 million total. And the kid. Tyler gets his college fund and that's it. Once we're in Costa Rica, he can figure out his own life." Brian's laughter was harsh. Cold. "Baby. I like that about you." Mitchell also learned about Brian's background through Phil's contacts. Brian Hagan was a former cop turned private investigator who'd lost his license for evidence tampering. He now worked as a fixer for wealthy clients who needed problems to disappear permanently. Jennifer had met him 6 months ago when she'd hired him to investigate Mitchell's business dealings, looking for grounds for a profitable divorce. Instead, they discovered something more lucrative. Mitchell was worth more dead than divorced. The extent of Tyler's involvement became clearer through recorded conversations. The boy had been feeding them information for months, believing he was helping his mother gather evidence for divorce proceedings. He had no idea about the murder plot until the final week, and by then he was too terrified and complicit to back out. But Mitchell's most important discovery came from Wayne Tuttle, Brian's criminal associate who'd helped orchestrate the fake carjacking. Wayne was a cocaine addict with gambling debts, and Brian had been using him for muscle work. Through careful surveillance, Mitchell learned that Wayne was supposed to have been the one to kill Mitchell, but Brian had decided to handle it personally to avoid loose ends. Wayne didn't know this. He thought Brian had chickened out and hired professional killers instead. This paranoia made Wayne a potential weak link in their operation. On the 4th day, Mitchell began his counteroffensive. First, he anonymously contacted Wayne's parole officer, providing photographic evidence of Wayne's drug use and association with known felons. Wayne was arrested within hours, creating stress fractures in Brian's organization. Next, Mitchell began haunting Jennifer and Brian psychologically. Using his knowledge of their routines, he started leaving subtle signs that someone was watching them. A coffee cup moved on Jennifer's kitchen table while she was showering. Brian's car alarm triggered repeatedly during the night. Fresh flowers appeared on Mitchell's grave, despite the cemetery being locked after hours. The psychological pressure began to show. Jennifer started drinking more, jumping at shadows. Brian installed additional security cameras around his apartment, but Mitchell's military training allowed him to avoid detection while still maintaining surveillance. Meanwhile, Mitchell was building his team. Through Annette's legal network, he contacted Monica Dickinson, Jennifer's sister. Monica had always suspected Jennifer was cheating but had no proof. When Annette approached her with evidence of the affair and murder plot, Monica was horrified but willing to help. Jennifer always thought she was smarter than everyone else, Monica told Mitchell during a secure meeting at Annette's office. Even as kids, she'd manipulate situations to get what she wanted. But murder? I never imagined she'd go that far. Monica agreed to act as Mitchell's inside source, feeding Jennifer false information while reporting back on her sister's state of mind and future plans. Mitchell's most valuable recruit was Roman Minor, a former Special Forces operative who now worked private security. Roman had been referred by Phil, and his particular skill set was exactly what Mitchell needed for the next phase of his plan. "You want me to kidnap them?" Roman asked during their briefing. "Not kidnap. Relocate. There's a difference." Mitchell spread out architectural blueprints of an abandoned warehouse he'd purchased through shell companies. "I want them isolated but not suspicious. They need to come willingly." "What's the timeline?" "Soon." Jennifer's getting nervous, and Brian's starting to suspect Wayne might talk. They'll want to accelerate their exit strategy. As if summoned by Mitchell's words, his surveillance equipment picked up a panicked phone call between Jennifer and Brian. "Wayne's lawyer is asking questions," Brian said. "Wants to know about Wayne's whereabouts the night your husband died. We need to move up our timeline." "How soon?" "Tomorrow night. I've got a boat arranged. We hit the bank accounts in the morning, transfer everything to offshore accounts, then we're on a plane to Costa Rica by midnight." "What about the funeral?" "People will expect me to." "Fuck the funeral. Dead husband, grieving widow, whatever. We'll be sipping mojitos while they're lowering an empty coffin." Mitchell smiled grimly as he listened. Perfect. They were going to run, which meant they'd be isolated and vulnerable during the transition. It was time to spring his trap. He made one final call to Tyler's burner phone, knowing the boy had been agonizing over his father's death for days. "Tyler, this is your dad." The silence stretched for nearly 30 seconds. When Tyler finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. "Dad. But you're dead. I saw the news. The truck." "I'm very much alive, son. And we need to talk." Chapter 5. The trap is set. Tyler's hands shook as he drove to the location Mitchell had specified, a parking garage downtown, Level 3, Section C. His father was supposed to be dead, burned alive in his truck 4 days ago. Yet the voice on the phone had been unmistakably Mitchell's, calm and controlled as always. Mitchell waited in the shadows between two concrete pillars, watching Tyler arrive in his beat-up Honda. The boy looked haggard, eyes red from crying, guilt etched in every line of his face. Good. Guilt would make him malleable. "Dad." Tyler's voice echoed in the empty garage. Mitchell stepped into the light. Tyler stumbled backward, his face cycling through shock, relief, and terror. "You're alive. Jesus Christ, you're alive." Tyler started toward him, then stopped. "But the truck, the blood, how?" "Sit down, Tyler." Mitchell gestured to a concrete ledge. "We have a lot to discuss." For the next hour, Mitchell laid out everything he knew. Tyler's face went progressively paler as he learned about Brian's criminal background, the murder plot, and Jennifer's true intentions. "She was going to kill you too," Mitchell concluded. "After they got the money. Brian doesn't leave witnesses." Tyler buried his face in his hands. I never wanted this. I thought it was just about divorce. About Mom getting a fair settlement. But you knew about the murder plan. You admitted it to me. Only at the very end. Brian pulled me aside the night before and said there'd been a change of plans. He said it would look like an accident, that you wouldn't suffer. I was going to warn you, I swear, but then I got scared and you chose self-preservation over your father's life. The words hit Tyler like physical blows. He looked up at Mitchell with desperate eyes. I know I can't undo what I did, but I'll do anything to make it right. Anything. Mitchell studied his adopted son carefully. The boy was broken, genuinely remorseful, and completely under Mitchell's control. Perfect. Here's what's going to happen, Mitchell said. Jennifer and Brian are planning to run tomorrow night. They think I'm dead, which gives us an advantage. You're going to help me spring a trap. What kind of trap? The kind that ensures they pay for what they've done. Mitchell's voice was ice cold. But Tyler, understand this. Your participation doesn't earn you forgiveness. It might earn you survival. Tyler nodded miserably. What do you need me to do? Mitchell explained the plan. Tomorrow afternoon, Tyler would tell Jennifer that he'd been contacted by someone claiming to have information about Mitchell's murder. A mysterious caller who'd witnessed the carjacking and wanted to sell the information to the highest bidder, the police or Jennifer's family. You'll arrange a meeting for tomorrow night at the Old Riverside Warehouse District. Tell her this witness wants $50,000 for silence, and he'll only deal with family members, meaning her and you. What if she brings Brian? She will. Brian won't let her go alone to meet a potential witness. That's exactly what I'm counting on. Tyler looked confused. But Dad, if they're planning to leave town tomorrow night anyway, why would they care about a witness? Mitchell smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Because I'm going to make them believe that this witness has information that could bring them down even in Costa Rica. Information about their offshore accounts, their new identities, their escape route. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Jennifer and Brian would come to the meeting location believing they were dealing with an opportunistic witness they could either buy off or eliminate. Instead, they'd find themselves walking into a carefully orchestrated confrontation with a man they thought was dead. What happens to them after? Tyler asked quietly. That depends on how cooperative they are. Tyler swallowed hard. And what happens to me? Mitchell stood, looking down at the boy who'd helped plan his murder. You'll live. But Tyler, after tomorrow night, we're done. I'll make sure you have enough money to finish college and start your life, but you'll do it far away from me. We're not family anymore. The words devastated Tyler more than any physical punishment could have. He started to cry, great heaving sobs that echoed through the garage. I'm sorry, Dad. I'm so fucking sorry. Sorry doesn't bring back trust, son. Sorry doesn't undo betrayal. Mitchell turned to leave. Make the call to your mother. Set up the meeting. And Tyler? If you double-cross me again, Roman Minor will be the last person you ever see. That night, Mitchell finalized his preparations. The warehouse he'd chosen was perfect, isolated, with multiple entrance and exit points, and completely soundproof. Roman had equipped it with lights, cameras, and restraint systems. Phil had provided additional security equipment and would be on standby as backup. Annette had prepared legal documents transferring all of Mitchell's assets to an irrevocable trust, with specific instructions for how Jennifer and Brian would be dealt with legally after tomorrow night's confrontation. Most importantly, Mitchell had prepared psychologically for what was coming. He'd spent years in combat zones, but this was different. This was personal. This was family. At dawn, he received the call he'd been waiting for. Dad. Tyler's voice was shaky. It's done. I called Mom an hour ago. She's bringing Brian to the meeting tonight at 10 p.m. They're scared, really scared. Brian's been asking lots of questions about what this witness might know. Good. Tyler. After tonight, disappear for a while. Go stay with a friend, take a trip, whatever. Don't be anywhere Jennifer or Brian might look for you, because they'll be angry when they realize it was a trap. Mitchell was quiet for a long moment. Because they won't be looking for anyone ever again. The line went dead, leaving Tyler alone with the growing realization that his father, the man he'd helped betray, was about to do something that would change all their lives forever. As night fell over the city, Mitchell Becker prepared for the final act of his deadly game. Tomorrow, the world would learn what happened when someone tried to kill a man who'd spent his life learning how to survive. Chapter 6. The First Cut. Jennifer spent the day pacing Brian's apartment like a caged animal, chain-smoking and checking her phone obsessively. The mysterious witness Tyler had described sounded dangerous, someone who claimed to have seen Brian's face during the carjacking, and knew details only the killer would know. "We should just leave now," she insisted for the 10th time. "Forget the meeting, forget the witness. We have enough money to disappear." Brian was methodically cleaning his .45 caliber pistol, the one he'd intended to use on Mitchell before deciding the fake carjacking would look more convincing. "And spend the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders? No way. We deal with this witness tonight, permanently, then we're free." "What if it's a trap? Set by who? Your husband's dead, kid thinks it was random criminals, and nobody else knows anything." Brian slammed the clip into his gun. "We go in hard and fast. 50 grand to shut him up, or a bullet if he gets greedy." Jennifer watched him load extra ammunition into his jacket pockets. "Brian, maybe we should think about this." "Baby, I've been thinking about it all day. This witness is the only loose end. Once he's handled, we're home free." Brian pulled Jennifer close, kissing her roughly. "Trust me. After tonight, we start our new life with clean hands." At 9:30 p.m., they drove to the Riverside Warehouse District in Brian's modified SUV. The area was industrial wasteland, abandoned buildings, empty lots, and no witnesses for miles. Perfect for making problems disappear. Jennifer's nervousness increased as they navigated the dark streets. Tyler said Building 47. "Are you sure this is right? GPS says we're close." Brian checked his rearview mirror for the 20th time. "Remember, we go in together, keep the meeting short, and don't let this guy get comfortable." They found Building 47 at the end of a dead-end street. It was a 3-story brick structure with most of its windows boarded up. A single side door was propped open, spilling yellow light into the darkness. "Cozy," Brian muttered, parking 20 feet from the entrance. "You stay behind me, and keep your hand on the backup gun I gave you." They approached the building cautiously. Inside, they found a small reception area with concrete floors and fluorescent lights humming overhead. A handwritten sign read, "Conference room, 2nd floor, follow arrows." "This is getting weird," Jennifer whispered. "Stay calm. Desperate people do weird things." Brian led the way up a narrow staircase, following spray-painted arrows on the walls. The 2nd floor opened into a large room that had once been a factory floor. Folding chairs were arranged in a circle under harsh industrial lighting. In the center sat a card table with a manila envelope and a bottle of water. "Hello," Brian called out. "We're here for the meeting. Please take seats," came a voice from speakers mounted in the ceiling. "Mr. Hagan, Mrs. Weeks, thank you for coming." Jennifer and Brian exchanged glances. The voice was electronically distorted, impossible to identify. "Who the hell are you?" Brian demanded, his hand moving toward his gun. "Someone who knows exactly what you did 4 nights ago. Please, sit. Let's discuss business like civilized people." Reluctantly, they took chairs near the table. Brian kept his gun partially drawn, scanning the shadows for threats. "You claim to have witnessed my husband's murder," Jennifer said, trying to project confidence. "What exactly did you see?" "I saw Brian Hagan set fire to Mitchell Becker's truck after spreading blood packets inside to simulate a murder scene." The voice was calm, matter of fact. I saw him dispose of incendiary evidence in a dumpster 3 blocks away. I saw him make a phone call to you, Jennifer, confirming that the job was done. The color drained from both their faces. This witness knew details that hadn't been released to police or media. What do you want? Brian asked through gritted teeth. Originally, $50,000 for my silence. But the more I've learned about you both, the more interesting this situation has become. Meaning what? Meaning Mitchell Becker isn't actually dead, and you two are about to discover what happens when you try to kill someone smarter than you are. The lights suddenly cut out, plunging the room into absolute darkness. Jennifer screamed as the sound of multiple footsteps echoed around them. Emergency lighting kicked in a moment later, bathing everything in hellish red. 3 men in tactical gear had appeared in the room, faces covered, weapons drawn. But it was the 4th figure that made Jennifer's blood freeze. Mitchell Becker stepped out of the shadows, very much alive, wearing body armor and carrying an assault rifle with military precision. "Hello, darling," he said to Jennifer, his voice quiet and deadly. "Miss me?" Brian's gun was halfway out of his holster when the nearest tactical operator put him down with a taser. He convulsed on the concrete floor, his weapon skittering away. Jennifer tried to run but found the exits blocked. She backed against the wall, shaking uncontrollably. "This isn't possible," she whispered. "You're dead. I saw the truck. The blood." "Oh, there was blood," Mitchell said conversationally. "Just not mine. You'd be amazed what you can accomplish with some pig's blood and a basic understanding of forensic science." Brian groaned as the electrical shock wore off. The tactical operators zip-tied his hands behind his back and hauled him into a chair. "Tyler told you everything, didn't he?" Jennifer's voice was hoarse with terror. "Tyler told me about your affair, your murder plot, and your escape plans. He also told me about the information he'd been feeding you for months." Mitchell circled them slowly, like a predator evaluating prey. "But what Tyler didn't know, what you didn't know, is that I've been aware of your activities for quite some time." "That's impossible." "Jennifer, I spent 8 years conducting intelligence operations in active war zones. Did you really think I wouldn't notice when my own family was conducting surveillance on me?" Mitchell laughed, but the sound held no humor. "I let you gather your intelligence. I let you make your plans. I even let you think you'd succeeded." Brian struggled against his restraints. "You crazy bastard, this is kidnapping. When the cops find out." "The cops think I'm dead, Brian. They're not looking for me." Mitchell leaned down until his face was inches from Brian's. "And when they do find my body, which they will eventually, the forensic evidence will show that Mitchell Becker was murdered by Brian Hagan and Jennifer Weeks in a botched robbery." "What the hell does that mean?" Mitchell smiled, and for the first time in her life, Jennifer understood what real evil looked like. "It means, Brian, that you're going to confess to killing me. You're going to provide details only the killer would know. You're going to lead police to where you hid my body." Mitchell stood, his voice growing colder. "And then you're going to die in a tragic accident before you can stand trial." The room fell silent except for the hum of the industrial lighting. Jennifer and Brian stared at Mitchell, finally understanding that they weren't dealing with a suburban car dealer anymore. They were facing someone who'd spent years learning how to break people professionally. "Of course," Mitchell continued, "if you prefer the alternative, we can discuss that too." "What alternative?" Jennifer whispered. "You can tell me everything, every detail of your plan, every person involved, every dollar you've stolen or plan to steal. You can sign confessions taking full responsibility for attempting to murder me. And you can accept the consequences I've designed for you." "And if we do that?" Mitchell's smile widened. "Then instead of dying quickly, you'll live long enough to truly understand what you've done to yourselves." As the implications sank in, Jennifer began to cry. Brian renewed his struggles against the zip ties, but the tactical operators, Roman Miner and his team, were professionals. The game had taken a new turn, and Mitchell Becker was no longer playing defense. Chapter 7. The Confessions. Mitchell had learned interrogation techniques from the best Marine Corps intelligence specialists who'd broken hardened terrorists in Iraq and Afghanistan. Jennifer and Brian were pampered suburbanites who'd never faced real pressure in their lives. They would break within hours. The warehouse had been prepared methodically. Separate holding areas for each prisoner, recording equipment to document their confessions, and soundproofing that would contain any screams. Roman Minor and his team maintained professional distance, following Mitchell's orders with military precision. Brian was first. Stripped to his underwear and secured to a metal chair in a concrete room lit by a single bulb, he tried to maintain his defiance for exactly 43 minutes. "I want a lawyer," he repeated for the dozenth time. "This is illegal detention. When the FBI finds out." "Brian," Mitchell interrupted calmly, "the FBI thinks I'm dead. The local police think I'm dead. My own wife celebrated my murder. So far as the world is concerned, you succeeded in killing me." He leaned forward, hands clasped. "Do you understand what that means?" "It means you're fucking insane." "It means," Mitchell continued as if Brian hadn't spoken, "that legally speaking, I don't exist anymore. Dead men don't kidnap people. Dead men don't commit crimes." Which raises an interesting question. What happens to someone who gets killed by a dead man? The psychological pressure was relentless. Mitchell had studied Brian's profile extensively. Former corrupt cop, gambling addiction, daddy issues from an abusive childhood. Every weakness was a pressure point to exploit. "Jennifer's in the next room, you know," Mitchell mentioned casually an hour later. "Roman's explaining to her that she has a choice. Cooperate fully, or watch what happens to the man she betrayed her family for." "She won't break," Brian said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Brian, she's been cheating on me for 6 months and helped plan my murder. What exactly makes you think she's loyal to anyone but herself?" As if summoned, Jennifer's voice echoed through speakers in Brian's room. Sobbing, terrified, begging for mercy. "Please, I'll tell you everything. Just don't hurt me. Please, Mitchell, I'm sorry. I'm so fucking sorry." Brian's face went white. "That's not. She wouldn't." "Wouldn't what?" "Betray you to save herself." Mitchell chuckled. "Brian, she betrayed a husband of 22 years and a son she raised from childhood. What makes you special?" The psychological warfare continued for hours. Mitchell alternated between reasonable conversation and cold intimidation, slowly breaking down Brian's mental defenses. He played recordings of Jennifer's confessions, actually Roman interrogating an empty room while Jennifer was unconscious in another cell, making Brian believe his lover had already turned on him. By dawn, Brian was broken. "I'll tell you whatever you want to know," he whispered, his voice hoarse from shouting denials. Just make it stop. Tell me about the murder plot. From the beginning." Brian's confession was comprehensive and damning. Jennifer had hired him 6 months ago to investigate Mitchell's business dealings, hoping to find evidence of affairs or financial impropriety for divorce proceedings. Instead, they'd begun an affair, and Jennifer had realized she'd get more money as a widow than a divorcee. She said Mitchell was worth $8 million dead, maybe half that in a divorce, Brian sobbed. She wanted him gone permanently. And Tyler's involvement. "The kid was our inside source." Jennifer convinced him it was just for divorce research, schedules, meetings, business information. He had no idea about the murder plan until the last week. When did he learn about the murder? 3 days before. I pulled him aside and told him there'd been a change of plans. Said his dad would have an accident, but wouldn't suffer. Kid freaked out, but by then he was too deep to back out. "And after my death, Jennifer inherits everything. We liquidate the assets, transfer the money offshore, and disappear to Costa Rica. Tyler gets his college fund and that's it. We leave him behind." Mitchell recorded every word, documenting the conspiracy in excruciating detail. Brian's confession would be legally worthless in court, obtained under duress and by someone who was legally dead, but Mitchell wasn't planning on using the courts. Jennifer's interrogation was different. Where Brian responded to intimidation, Jennifer crumbled under guilt manipulation. Mitchell had raised Tyler from age 3. Jennifer had given birth to him and watched him grow up. Motherhood was her psychological weak point. "He's 18 years old, Jennifer," Mitchell said quietly as she sat in her cell, still wearing the black dress from his memorial service. "Tyler's barely an adult, and you used him to help plan his father's murder. What kind of mother does that?" "I never wanted Tyler involved," she wept. "That was Brian's idea. I told him we should leave Tyler out of it. But you didn't stop it." "I couldn't. Brian said Tyler was already in too deep. If we backed out, he'd go to the police, and we'd all go to prison. So you decided killing me was the better option?" Jennifer's breakdown was complete and devastating. 22 years of marriage, 2 decades of shared memories, and she'd thrown it all away for a criminal with a gambling addiction and a violence fetish. "I fell out of love with you years ago," she sobbed. "You were never home, always working, always focused on business. I felt like a stranger in my own marriage. So you decided to murder me rather than ask for a divorce?" Brian said a divorce would take years and cost hundreds of thousands in legal fees. He said there was a better way. And Tyler was supposed to go to college and move on with his life. We were going to set up a trust fund for him before we left the country. Set up with money stolen from his murdered father. Jennifer couldn't respond to that. The moral horror of what she'd done was finally penetrating her self-justification. By the second day, Mitchell had complete confessions from both conspirators, documented evidence of their plot, and detailed information about their planned escape route. More importantly, he'd broken them psychologically to the point where they were completely under his control. But confession was only the beginning of Mitchell's plan. "Here's what happens next," he told them during their first joint session since capture. They sat chained to opposite walls of the main room, forced to look at each other while Mitchell explained their fate. "You're going to disappear. Brian, your parole officer will be told you violated terms and fled the state. Jennifer, your friends and family will learn you suffered a mental breakdown after my death and checked yourself into a private psychiatric facility." "For how long?" Jennifer whispered. "For the rest of your lives," Mitchell replied matter-of-factly. "You wanted me dead so you could enjoy $8 million in Costa Rica. Instead, you're going to spend whatever time you have left learning what real hell feels like." "You can't keep us here forever," Brian protested weakly. "Someone will come looking." "Who?" "Brian, you're an ex-cop with no family and a criminal record. Your only friend was Wayne Tuttle, who's back in prison. Jennifer, you've been telling everyone for weeks that you need time alone to grieve. Monica thinks you're visiting a grief counselor in another state." Mitchell walked between them, his voice calm and conversational. "You see, I've had months to plan this while you thought you were planning my death. Every detail has been considered. Every loose end has been tied up." "What about Tyler?" Jennifer asked desperately. "Tyler made his choice when he chose to help you instead of warn me. He's alive, he has money for college, and he knows never to cross me again. That's more mercy than either of you deserve." Mitchell paused in front of them, his expression unreadable. "You wanted to know what happens next? Tomorrow, we begin your education in consequences. You'll learn what it feels like to be completely helpless. To have your fate controlled by someone who sees you as less than human. To know that every breath you take exists only at the pleasure of someone you tried to destroy." He turned toward the exit, then stopped. "Oh, and one more thing. You'll have plenty of time to think about how this could have been avoided. All you had to do was not try to murder me." As Mitchell left them alone in the darkness, Jennifer and Brian faced the growing realization that their nightmare was just beginning. They'd succeeded in killing Mitchell Becker, the car dealer, the suburban husband, the adoptive father. But they'd awakened something far more dangerous. A predator who'd spent years learning how to destroy enemies without mercy or conscience. And this predator had all the time in the world to make them pay. Chapter 8. The Reckoning. 3 weeks into their captivity, Jennifer and Brian had been reduced to shells of their former selves. Mitchell's psychological torture was methodical and relentless, calculated to break them completely without leaving physical evidence that could later be questioned. They were kept in separate cells most of the time, allowed together only during education sessions, where Mitchell forced them to confront the full scope of their betrayal. He made them watch recordings of Tyler's breakdown when he learned about the murder plot. He played audio of their own phone calls, letting them hear their casual discussions about disposing of Mitchell's body and celebrating their inheritance. "Did you know Jennifer laughed when you told her I was dead?" Mitchell asked Brian during one session. "Actual laughter," she said. "God, I can't believe it's finally over." Brian stared at Jennifer with hollow eyes. "You laughed." "Brian, I." "She also asked when she could access the life insurance money," Mitchell continued. "Seems she was more interested in the payout schedule than whether I'd suffered." The psychological warfare was designed to turn them against each other, and it was working. After weeks of stress, sleep deprivation, and constant fear, their relationship was disintegrating. "This is all your fault," Brian snarled at Jennifer during one joint session. "I was making good money as a private investigator. You're the one who wanted your husband dead. You were the one who said murder was better than divorce. You convinced me we could get away with it. Because you were crying about how miserable you were, how trapped you felt. I was trying to help you. Help me. You were helping yourself to $8 million. Mitchell watched their mutual destruction with clinical interest. In psychological warfare, the most effective technique was often making enemies destroy each other rather than destroying them directly. But psychological torture was only the first phase of Mitchell's justice. Phase 2 began when he brought in Jerry Acosta, a former cartel enforcer who now worked private contracts for people who could afford his specialized services. Jerry's job wasn't to inflict physical damage, it was to demonstrate how easily physical damage could be inflicted. "See, the thing about breaking fingers," Jerry explained to Jennifer while she watched from her chains, "is that it's not really about the pain. It's about the sound. That little pop when the bone snaps. Most people break mentally the first time they hear it." He held up Brian's hand, gently flexing the fingers while Brian whimpered. "But we're not going to break your fingers today," Jerry continued conversationally. "Today we're just going to talk about what it would feel like if we did." The psychological impact was devastating. Jennifer and Brian were forced to contemplate physical torture without actually experiencing it, which often proved more effective than actual violence. The imagination could conjure horrors worse than reality. "Please," Jennifer sobbed. "We confessed. We told you everything. What more do you want?" "What I want," Mitchell said quietly, "is for you to understand what you stole from me. 22 years of marriage. 18 years of fatherhood. A family I trusted with my life. We can't give that back." "No, you can't. But you can pay for it." Mitchell nodded to Jerry, who produced a small medical kit. "Dr. Acosta here is going to help you understand pain the way I understood pain when I realized my family had betrayed me." But instead of physical torture, Jerry administered sedatives that left Jennifer and Brian conscious but helpless, aware of their surroundings but unable to resist or fight back. "Paralytic agents," Mitchell explained as they lay motionless on medical tables. "You can see, hear, and feel everything, but you can't move a muscle. It's how I felt when I discovered your plot, aware of the danger but powerless to stop what was happening to my life." For 12 hours, they lay paralyzed while Mitchell systematically destroyed everything they'd planned for their future. He showed them documents proving their offshore accounts had been frozen and seized. He played recordings of Costa Rican authorities being alerted to watch for them at airports and border crossings. "Your new life is gone," he told them as the drugs wore off. "Your escape route is blown. Your money is confiscated. You have nothing left except what I choose to give you." The final phase of Mitchell's justice was the most brutal: complete isolation and abandonment. "Here's what happens now," he told them during their last joint session. You're going to be separated permanently. Jennifer, you'll be transferred to a private facility where you'll live under the name Sarah Collins, a mentally disturbed woman with no family or friends. You'll receive basic care, food, shelter, medical attention, but you'll spend the rest of your life knowing that everyone you ever loved believes you're dead. Jennifer started screaming, a sound that echoed off the concrete walls. Brian, you'll be relocated to a compound in rural Mexico where you'll work off your debts to some very unforgiving people. Your gambling addiction made you vulnerable to loan sharks, and I've purchased your obligations from them. You'll spend however long you live repaying money you never actually borrowed. This is insane, Brian gasped. You can't just make people disappear. I'm not making you disappear, Mitchell corrected. I'm giving you exactly what you wanted. A new life far away from here. You just won't be together, you won't have any money, and you'll spend every day wishing you'd never heard my name. Roman Miner and his team prepared the transfers with military efficiency. Jennifer was sedated and loaded into a medical transport vehicle that would take her to a private psychiatric facility in Montana, a place that specialized in patients with no outside contacts or family visitors. Brian was handed over to Francisco Holden, a human trafficker who ran labor camps in remote areas of Mexico. Francisco's organization had a reputation for keeping workers alive just long enough to be profitable. As the vehicles drove away into the night, Mitchell stood alone in the empty warehouse. 3 weeks of planning and execution had resulted in perfect justice, his enemies destroyed, his betrayal avenged, and his new identity secured. Tyler had been relocated to a college on the opposite coast, with enough money to finish his education but clear instructions never to contact Mitchell again. The boy would live, but he'd live knowing he'd helped plan his father's murder and lost his family forever. Mitchell Becker was officially dead, his murder solved, his killers vanished without a trace. But the man who'd planned and executed this operation was very much alive, ready to build a new life far from the suburban paradise that had concealed such deadly betrayal. As dawn broke over the industrial district, Mitchell felt something he hadn't experienced in months. Peace. His enemies were destroyed, his justice was complete, and his future was his own. The hunt was over. The prey had been consumed. And the predator was free to disappear into whatever life he chose to build next. Chapter 9. New Beginnings. 6 months later, Samuel Cross sat in a beachfront cafe in Belize, reading about the final closure of the Mitchell Becker murder case. Local police had declared Jennifer Weeks and Brian Hagan dead in absentia, victims of what appeared to be cartel violence near the Mexican border. Their bodies had never been found, but enough evidence had been discovered to convince authorities they'd been killed while attempting to flee the country with stolen money. Samuel Cross was 46 years old, a former military contractor who'd purchased a small resort on the Caribbean coast after inheriting money from a dead relative nobody had ever heard of. He was tanned, fit, and spoke fluent Spanish with the local staff. To his neighbors, he was a quiet American who kept to himself but was generous with local charities and always paid his bills in cash. The transformation from Mitchell Becker to Samuel Cross had been planned for years, long before Jennifer's betrayal had made it necessary. False identities were something Mitchell had learned to construct during his intelligence career, and maintaining them required constant attention to detail. Every aspect of Samuel's life was carefully curated. The resort provided legitimate income that explained his lifestyle. His background story, former military contractor seeking peaceful retirement, explained his skills and resources without raising questions. His relationship with local authorities was cordial but distant, the kind maintained by wealthy expatriates who wanted privacy above all else. The Belize operation was just one of 3 identities Mitchell had established over the years. He had similar setups in Colombia and Thailand, each with their own financial networks and documentation. If Samuel Cross ever became compromised, he could disappear and emerge somewhere else within 48 hours. But more than survival, the new identity represented freedom. For the first time in decades, Mitchell lived without the weight of betrayal or the burden of trust. He answered to no one, owed nothing to anyone, and could make decisions based purely on his own interests. The resort was profitable and growing. Mitchell had discovered he enjoyed the hospitality business, It allowed him to observe human nature without emotional investment. Guests came and went, staff worked and were paid, and nobody expected anything more complicated than efficient service and comfortable accommodations. The only shadow on his new life was the occasional news about Tyler. Through carefully maintained surveillance networks, Mitchell learned that his former son was struggling in college. Poor grades, drinking problems, and difficulty maintaining relationships. The boy was clearly suffering from guilt and trauma over his role in the murder plot. Mitchell felt nothing about Tyler's struggles. The young man had made his choices and would live with the consequences. Sympathy was a luxury Mitchell could no longer afford. The larger world continued spinning without Mitchell Becker. His dealerships had been sold to pay estate taxes and legal fees, with the proceeds going to the charities he'd specified in his final will. His house in Millbrook Hills had been purchased by a young family who had no idea of its history. The suburban paradise he'd built with Jennifer had been completely erased. Sometimes, late at night when the resort was quiet and the Caribbean waves lapped against the shore, Mitchell wondered if he missed his old life. The answer was always the same. He missed the illusion of his old life, but not the reality. The reality had been built on lies, sustained by betrayal, and destined for destruction. Better to live alone and trust no one than to build another house of cards that could be toppled by the people closest to him. On this particular evening, as Samuel Cross finished his dinner and prepared for another peaceful night in paradise, he received an encrypted message on a phone that only 3 people in the world knew existed. The message was from Annette Hunter, Tyler Lawson found dead in his dorm room. Apparent suicide. Thought you should know. Mitchell stared at the message for a long time, then deleted it without responding. Tyler had chosen his path 18 months ago when he decided to help murder his father rather than warn him. Everything that happened afterward, the psychological torture, the family destruction, the guilt and isolation that had ultimately killed him, was simply the natural consequence of that choice. Mitchell poured himself a glass of expensive rum and walked out onto the beach. The stars above the Caribbean were brilliant and uncountable, a vast universe where his small dramas meant nothing. Somewhere in that darkness, Jennifer was living as a mental patient with no memory of her real identity, thanks to the experimental drug treatments she'd been receiving. Brian was dead in a Mexican labor camp, killed by guards after attempting to escape for the 3rd time. The boy who'd called him Dad for 18 years was dead by his own hand, unable to live with what he'd done. Mitchell felt nothing about any of it. These weren't tragedies. They were problems that had been solved permanently. He finished his rum and walked back toward the resort, already planning tomorrow's activities. A group of German tourists were arriving in the morning, and he needed to ensure their rooms were properly prepared. The restaurant's new chef wanted to discuss expanding the dinner menu. The dive boat needed maintenance before next week's excursions. Simple problems with simple solutions. A life without betrayal, without family, without trust. A life where Mitchell Becker could finally rest, because the man he'd become had learned the most important lesson of all. The only person who could never betray you was